And we are live, ready for the Junior Speed Chess Champion Final. I am Grandmaster Robert Hess, and of course, alongside me today, as usual, is Grandmaster Dan Naroditsky. Danya, we have a thriller in the making between Nihal Sarin and Alexey Sarana. What are you expecting from today's final matchup?
Robert, a pleasure to be doing this again for the last time. The stage is set for an incredible showdown. Both of these players are amazing in and of themselves. They have also survived trial after trial, challenge after challenge, and they have made it to the finals against each other, Alexey Sarana and Nihal Sarin. I am expecting the most thrilling match yet, Robert, and that is saying a lot because we have seen some pretty darn thrilling matches already.
We certainly have, and if we bring up the Smarter Chess predictions brought to us by Chess Goals in this final between Nihal Sarin and Alexey Sarana, it's going to be a pretty balanced matchup. Though you see the final prediction down there, 14-12 in Nihal Sarin's favor, 63% win probability, and interestingly enough, Sarana has the edge, I would say, in the longer time controls. And he showed that. He evidenced that against Jeffrey Zhang in the semifinal, right? He just was dominant in the earlier stages, despite having some shaky positions.
He did, and he showed some superb opening preparation, and he showed incredible ability to adjust to different time controls. But Nihal is Nihal. We all know of his prowess in all time controls. His ratings reflect that, and he has played incredibly in all matches so far. He's just a force to be reckoned with. I don't even know what to say. These are both such beasts.
For sure. And let's remind everybody of the overall bracket to see how they got there. Nihal knocked off Andrew Tang, who qualified his way in, then beat Anton Smirnov, who was a pretty close matchup, and then looked dominant against Haik Martirosyan. That was probably the most surprising result in the entire bracket. And on the other side of things, Alexey Sarana, he beats his compatriot Andrei Yesipenko, then takes down the Americans Sevian and Zhang, and now he's facing off against Nihal Sarin. So, I mean, anything surprising there? I feel like we just come to expect, Sarana's success.
We have, but if you remember, it's crazy. Yesipenko is already a monster, and to beat him in the first round, not to mention the other two matchups, and the same, of course, goes for Nihal. I mean, these players faced incredible opposition in the very first matchup, not to mention the next stages. So to be able to win time and time again, dominant performances against Zhang, against Martirosyan are incredible. I mean, dominant performances of any kind against the best of the best here in the JSCC are always so impressive.
Certainly the case. And, for Sarana in particular, he beat higher rated FIDE classical opposition. I mean, Yesipenko is like 2680, Sevian somewhere around 2670, Jeffrey Jones over 2700.
So did he beat anyone good?
Just some slackers here and there. And we do have liftoff D4 played by Nihal. And one thing I'm going to be keeping my eye on is the speed, because Nihal has a tendency to spend a bit too much time in the early stages of the game, whereas Sarana was just a speedster against Jeffrey Zhang. He was always up on time, it felt like.
Right. And opening preparation is going to be extremely important in this match because that is what Sarana is known for. And Nihal is going to have to show, but obviously not that Nihal is not known for that.
Yeah.
To play very quickly in the opening.
Yeah, what is this line here? Knight
Whoa.
Take out e4, and then the bishop was hanging. But
a6. Yeah, I've seen this somewhere.
I don't know these lines. Yeah. I can understand what they're doing, but if we just back up a second here, the point was that after knight takes g5, if the knight want to capture it, queen takes g7 can happen, hitting the knight, hitting the rook, and the king is going to be caught in the center, probably to a deadly attack. So that's why black didn't go scoop off this bishop over here. Instead, we saw a castle. And after queen takes for a6, if that knight moves out the way, down goes the bishop on g5, and then that's why white castles and goes for an attack on the king's side. So Danya, black is up a pawn for the time being, though b5 is quite weak, as is c3. And still must be some kind of theory because Nihal is moving instantly.
Yeah, probably some like Bashir Lagrov, Iranian game from 2017. You think, wow, this is a crazy line. And then you see like 18 super level games from, Norway Chess, or I don't know why I brought up Norway Chess, but, one of those tournaments where, pretty decent players are playing normally, like Magnus. Man, can we commentate some actual players, Robert? But in any case, yeah, so I used to actually play the Vienna for black, which is what this is called. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't remember anything. What I do know is that white has now restored material equality, but black has restored proper development for his pieces. I think white's got the edge, though. If you look at that e5 pawn, it's under some pressure. You don't want to take on c6 prematurely, but you can play rook f1. And I think white is the one pressing on the gas pedal here for the time being.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And actually, an interesting move that I was thinking about instead of f3 was bishop to f4, because I'm trying to take on c6 and you can't move the pawn. But I understand that it's a little bit too much. You can't just go and get away with things like this often. I can protect the bishop like rook f6, and that way I can take your bishop when you take my knight. So getting fancy could backfire. It could also work out sometimes. But he went and said f3 and rook a to d1. So a little bit of a tamer approach.
Right. And bishop b3. Now the rook shifts over to e1, having misplaced the bishop. King to h8, getting the king out of the potential danger zone. And I think king h1, getting the king out of the potential danger zone.
Did you say that twice in a row? I'm just making sure that I heard that correctly.
I did say that twice in a row. I did say that twice in a row. But now I think that Nihal can try to, well, the battle revolves around the e5 pawn. The battle revolves around the e5 pawn. And whether or not Nihal will be able to put sufficient pressure on it, the game could also fizzle out in some kind of a draw.
Yeah, it's interesting that in this position, black has the better center, white has the bishop pair. And this bishop on b3, you have to be a bit careful not to leave it there too long, because if c4 happens and I can follow up with an attack on that bishop, it could get trapped over there. However, c4 does free up the d4 square for this black knight, and that's why that pawn is going to remain on c3 for the time being. And Daniel, rook came to d6.
Yeah,
I have this feeling that Nihal will try his best to apply more pressure in the center, but I could see this game turning from what I consider white's favor into black's favor if that center can expand eventually, like an e4 type of move. At the right moment, that can open up the position, and I feel like you have to be ready for it at all times.
Yeah, queen f2 comes to mind here, something to that effect. Preparing yourself against e4, which does open up the f-file. I mean, of course, you didn't necessarily mean immediately. I agree. I mean, there's a lot of things that white has to watch out for, in particular that center. And white has to decide how he's going to arrange his pieces. Is he going to go for c4, or is he going to go, let's say, queen f2, queen c5 as I proposed, or is he going to go, I don't know, bishop c1, bishop a? I mean, there's a lot of these maneuvers that exist and are out there in the ether, but you have to kind of pick one and stick with it, and that can be difficult.
For sure. Another one I'll throw out is bishop h4, bishop g3, a sort of standard rerouting of the bishop. You can start with bishop f4 to go to g3, just because this pawn e5 is pinned for the time being to the rook on e8. So white has many different options, and Nihal now is a little bit behind on the clock because he's spending his time here. I would be in the same boat. I would be thinking, like, which of these options will work out best for me? And I don't know, bishop h4 to
Bishop
g3.
h4 has that ring to it because it attacks the e5 pawn.
Yeah, so I think putting the bishop on g3 makes just a lot of sense here.
Right. And this is a critical moment. I think it's understandable why Nihal is taking his time here. It always seems weird to say that this moment could decide the game. But again, I think when you're analyzing a game, you come back always to these types of critical moments. And either you celebrate the decision making, or you say, man, I rushed, or I didn't pay attention to the right things.
And here, I think Nihal's just spending too much time, because he's, a minute and a half or so?
Yes.
Here, I can see it now. He just made the move.
H3.
2 minutes. He spent 2 minutes on the move.
Wow.
H3. And even though that's a perfectly fine move, he just now is in a hole in the clock. He's down a full minute. And we've seen Sarana match after match give him a lead on the clock. He continues to put pressure on his opponent. Then when there is a time scramble, he often is the one who comes out on top. However, we, of course, have to acknowledge Nihal is an absolute machine in bullet chess.
He is.
So if anyone can get out of a position with mere seconds on his clock, it is him.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about his display. Several bullet displays, which have been just absolutely marvelous. I mean, the speed, the accuracy, the intuition. But yeah, we've seen Sarana, particularly in the last match, as you said, put pressure on the opponent when he's got 40 seconds on the clock. And here Nihal dipping into his clock again, queen to a5, attacking c3. Another decision to be made for white. This is what Sarana is really good at, forcing his opponent to make decisions. I would say queen e3 comes to mind. Queen e3, queen c5, another idea. Perhaps Nihal is considering bishop g3, and after queen takes, well, he plays it. After queen takes e3, bishop c6, maybe restore material balance. I'm not sure about this. Something about this seems a little bit off, Robert.
Yeah, because the rook on e8 and there's a queen on e2 and the rook typically wins the battle. But he says, wait a sec, let me just steal your a4. I wasn't even looking at the a4
Me
pawn.
neither.
That was kind of obvious
who was?
in retrospect. Yeah, I know who was. Alexey was. But Donna, it's kind of obvious in retrospect that pawn is hanging now that he took it. But it's like, wait, isn't you take on c6 with your bishop, and after bishop takes e5, you can put your rook on e6, and that will force white to move the pawn to f4. That's a really big deal, because just to show something like this is if you have to play f4,
queen c3.
There's a problem down on g2. It's for this rook to come to g6 in the future, and just like the bishop on e5 looks very good, the bishop on c6 does. A queen c3 is a very nice move that you spotted because the queen is not defended on e2 enough times.
Yeah, and queen takes h3 is a threat there. Jeez.
So rook e6 played, f4, and then I'll take on c3 here. Just one nice tactical sequence that works out in Sarana's favor.
And he doesn't have to. I mean, he's got pressure on g2 that he could mount, but the opportunity train doesn't come along twice in terms of such a pawn. Or as Grandmaster Alexander Onishuk once told me, free pawns don't just lie on the side of the road. And he said that as a metaphor because I was refusing the hors d'oeuvres at the opening ceremony of the U.S. Championship. And, there were just sandwiches lying there. And he said, free pawns don't just lie on the side of the road. And I immediately picked up a sandwich and started eating it. So,
you took that wise, the wise
sage
saying there of a wonderful grandmaster in Alexander Onishuk. And hey, Danya, you saw queen c3. Sarana follows your lead here, and king h2. What do you make of that decision to keep the queens on the board? Trading off I think would have been bad because the rook lands on e2, just too much activity for black. But if we think bigger picture, if you could just take the queens off the board as they are right now, does that help white or black?
Black, partly because of the time situation, because he gets a blank check when it comes to just making attempts. And that g2 pawn is, if the rook lands on e2, white's rook is going to be saddled to g1. I mean, we've talked about this before. Opposite colored bishops, yes. But the rooks on the board lend the game a far more combative character than if they had been alone. What I also like about Nihal's decision, Sarana has a minute, and you mentioned that you could see the game turning in black's favor earlier, and it did. I can see the game, strangely as this sounds, turning to white's favor potentially because of that g7 pawn, particularly if white lifts his rook from e3 to g3.
Yeah, that looks like a very easy plan to execute for Nihal here. Black is up at pawn, but it's irrelevant for the time being. That b pawn is not pushing with so much material on the board. So I think that Sarana has to figure out a way to save his king. The f5 pawn's under attack, so maybe queen f8, king h7, g6. But it does feel risky to push this g pawn because then your dark squares are permanently open.
He does it.
Yeah, this is. I feel like there it goes, king h7.
That's exactly what he does.
And here comes g6.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't. Well, he could play rook e7, but yeah, that g6. Now the queen drops to d1, and as you said, Robert, the diagonal has opened up. I don't know who's. I mean, practically speaking, I don't know who's better. Now Sarana has dipped on the clock.
Yeah, Sarana in time trouble himself. In fact, Nihal is ahead, and that I think bodes well for white's chances. You made the point that you could see this turning around. It just feels like a position where black's king is in worse shape than white's because the pawn on g2 is defended while this rook on g3 is attacking g6. It's protecting g2. But how to make progress from here, that's a totally different question because you can't play h4, h5. The h4 square is covered by black's queen. And he plays king to h1.
Okay, that's an odd move. Because it steps back into the pin. I mean, you could play king h2. I don't think that, rook g1, he's really sort of, crouching and digging himself. This is a little bit odd from Nihal. Now h5, Sarana pouncing, rook to d3, trying to trade rooks.
Okay, I think
that's a bit of an odd sequence.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to trade a pair of rooks. That's what Nihal was focused on. And with the queen trade being offered, it could have traded queens. I thought that ending without the queens would have been pretty easy to hold. But he says your king on h7 is still very weak here.
He might be playing for a win. Yeah.
That's brave. That's definitely
brave. It is. But if he plants the queen on g5, rook a1, he's coming with the rook a8, b5 softens up the bishop. Sarana doesn't want to do that. That's a big concession.
And queen d8 is nice because it also stops any kind of queen g5.
Rook a8 now, though. Okay, then maybe rook f8. Now that is another committal move. Okay.
Danya, I see.
Whoa.
There's a tactical sequence there that I'll show after the game, in that rook 8. But I just G3 check. Watch out for a back rank check.
Okay, maybe. But Black's also got to watch out. Both kings in 5 seconds for both of them. Here we go.
Queen e6 to go to h3.
Oh
no!
Rook h8, queen c2.
Oh.
Queen c2 immediately. Rook
h8,
it's mate. Oh, what a turnaround! And Nihal gets it.
Oh my goodness! Oh, we have to look at that.
That is crazy, and I want to see your sequence as well.
All right, let's go back to the analysis board to bring up the game that just finished. So let's bring up this. Yeah, the one sequence that you were talking about this rook a8 move, and right here, if rook a8, rook f8, I thought there was some kind of queen g5, but there's not, or like queen h4,
mate, yeah.
trying to like take on f8 and mate you back here. But unfortunately, after queen g5, queen takes the g2 pawn is hanging with mate first. Mm-hmm. My whole idea was distract your queen and then take your rook and say, hey, your queen's under attack and I'm mating you. But of course, g2.
That would have worked actually. Had the pawn been on g3, for example.
Yes, if the pawn were up one square, that would have worked. But sadly, it doesn't with the pawn g2. And towards the end of this game, Danya, it looked like Black was the one trying to play for a win, but rook d8 came and he just was winning for Black. Was winning. Yeah. Oh my gosh! Queen takes e5. Queen takes e5 was winning.
Wow.
Back rank checkmate.
Won.
Oh, everything! What a
That's
ridiculous
unbelievable.
Game. Oh man!
And it comes all of a sudden. I mean, because Sarana was paying attention to that h3 square, as were we. But wow, what incredible stuff.
And instead, you found the checkmate. The king was ensnared by white's pieces, and that was that. Let's go to the second game because that one is in full swing. And there's a pawn on g4. So I look like a normal position somehow, the queen on d5. But then I saw white's pawn is on g4. So the knight cannot capture the queen. It is pinned. But you can either capture the queen directly or capture this bishop so you can capture the queen next move. It's a very common type of idea. But I think the intermezzo queen takes b4. There is no queen f3 because queen takes f8. So what do you think about this queen takes bishop move down here?
I like the two bishops personally. I think that it can be easier to play with the two bishops, but there are certain squares that the knights can jump to, and he goes bishop d2. Now, decision for Black, does he take the queen and go, let's say, knight a5 and go after that pawn? Again, I'm sure that this is still theory, or queen a5 is the other, I think, option in my eyes. Knight takes d4 doesn't work because of queen takes queen. Actually, that would have been that would have led to some wild complications, but that doesn't work for Black. So I think the real decision is between queen a5 and queen takes d3. Queen takes b3.
Yeah, I just want to point out that you were looking at this d4 square. So many tactics flying in this position. Yes, the black queen is under attack, but you're putting an attacker on the queen on b3. But instead, he takes and was rook to d8. And if you try to analyze this position, full picture, if we just started trying to talk about descriptively, Black's pawn structure is definitely better. But White's bishop on f1 in particular has the option to take over the board compared to this bishop on c8. So is bishop d7, bishop c6 a potential idea? Maybe. I don't fully C5. Understand. Okay, c5. But does that really fully let Black escape from some of the potential problems? Because it's kind of like a Catalan type of position.
Right. There's always going to be pressure on the queen side. That's right on the money, the Catalan reference, because sometimes you play c5, you take a deep breath. I finally liberated myself from the troubles. But that bishop on g2 in combination with some of the other squares on the queen side, he goes c6. So he takes a more sort of passive bunker-style approach, which is interesting because the bishop on g2 is now blunted by the pawn. Sarana has more active pieces, but I think Nihal is going to be asking him, well, how exactly do you make progress? I'm going to put my knight on d5, potentially put my pawn on a6. What is White going to do in order to progress here?
Yeah, if you play e4, you have to be very careful because that loosens up your defense of the d4 pawn. I think you can probably get away with it right now, but just as a sample line, e4, knight c7, the d4 pawn's already under attack, and at bishop e3, there's knight to b5, hitting your pin knight and hitting your pawn in the center. So you have to be really careful before you push this e-pawn because it does make this d-pawn like an immediate target.
Right. And that can be a useful tool in a blitz game, Robert, by the way. This idea, there's a move that you can play on any move, and on every move, you have to consider playing it, but you never know when to play it. So that takes away, I know it's a very convoluted sentence, but that takes away a lot of time And I like what Sarana is doing here, connecting his rooks. And there's a lot of improvements that he can make without playing e4.
Right. He can actually play f4. He can play g5 if he wants to, if for some reason kicking this knight away feels correct. But he can just start expanding, and black is really passive here.
Yes,
even
he
b6.
Is.
Your bishop was going to go to b7.
A5, bishop a6, though.
That is a much better plan, indeed, because the king on e2 is not exactly in the safest of positions right now. That's taking advantage of your opponent's decision to keep the king.
Having played Nihal in blitz games, he's incredibly good at this kind of defense, and he generates chances. But it's not just cheap tricks; it's actual annoying defensive attempts, and that's exactly what you have to do in a position like this. You don't go for the full 9 yards immediately. You go for a little bit of activity. You breathe some nervousness in your opponent, and then you go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, look at what Sarana just did. He went knight d3 a couple moves ago, and then brought his knight right back to e5. And it feels like he's wavering a bit, trying to figure out how to prevent black's a5, bishop a6. You pointed out that idea. It's a very good one. And he takes on d5. So interesting transition, Danya, where you take on d5, you have the worst queenside pawn structures, but your rook on h1 is very quickly coming to c1, and your rook on a1 perfectly placed, hitting the a7 pawn.
Right. And we indeed see this transformation in the pawn structure. Bishop d6 to cover that c7 square. And yes, the position has transformed. I don't think this is an unwelcome transformation for Nihal, especially if he can smoke that knight out of e5.
Yeah, I think the only way you can really smoke it out is by capturing it, because this knight can go to c6 at some moment, just taking advantage of the fact that there's a vulnerable light square, and it's a fianchetto bishop, but it's not a pawn. So in comes the knight. b5, of course, is an idea for Sarana. Push that one forward to cement control of that square. And anytime you take on e5, you're doubling white's pawns, but you're giving up more control of the c file, in particular this c7 square. So, Danya, I don't think you're going to take on e5.
Yeah, no, something tells me it's a little bit too committal. He goes a6, and he sets up a barricade, stopping b4, b5.
But you know what it walks into, right? Is knight c4, because your bishop on b7 is not defended.
Oh, no, you did. Bishop c7, knight a5.
Mm-hmm. Right, because I'm attacking your bishop, and your pawn, bishop c7, looks like it defends both, but knight a5, and your bishop is under attack down on the c5. Both of your bishops.
You're sharp today. He goes g5 instead. That could be helping black in the event of knight d7.
Right. And knight d7, that will protect the pawn on b6 very importantly, because this knight c4 tactic is a nuisance because precisely that pawn is left undefended. And I think that this knight c4 idea, you should always be on the lookout when bishops are staring each other down, and what happens if the piece in between them is removed. And that's why knight c4, it's a relatively common tactic in certain variations. I was just keeping an eye out on that. But Danya, so now that he has not played knight to c4, I guess he can play it if this knight, well, the knight really is only 2 squares, or unless you take on e5 first, which perhaps you can consider.
You can, but I don't think so. I would not part ways with that bishop, which is holding together the c7 square. I think he is deciding between knight e8 and knight d7, because knight e8 has also the benefit, and then you can play f6. He does go knight d7, taking this thing out of knight c4. Again, he can go f6 here, or he can delay it. You could go b5 conceivably, but that is a very responsible move. I don't like that, because that weakens the knight d3.
Yeah, that b5 move just is asking for it, giving control of the c5 square.
Exactly.
And this is the good thing about the double pawns, is that b5, knight b6 is always about pawn b2 to b3, taking away the very nice-looking c4 square from your knight. So the knight gets into c5, yours does not get into c4. So b5, unfortunately, not possible. f6, that's kind of a tough move psychologically to play, because then you soften up the e6 square, and you like the look of this pawn chain on the light squares culminating in the d5 square.
h4 and the pawn chain moves. Okay, yeah, f6 is the move you're considering. I would go king e7 first, probably. Yep.
But now you've allowed a knight c6 with check, which would force the bishop off.
But is he against trading bishops? He might be. Well, I guess we'll find out.
One other thing done is now white can play f5, because d5 is no longer defended. So if white wants to start chiseling at the structure, you can go directly for that.
Yep. And okay, rook a7, so he's trying to hold things together. Yeah, I agree with you. f5 is an idea. E4.
There also was almost a mating idea. It sounds weird, but b5, rook takes d6, what you want. Right?
Like, and if the rook was on c1,
yeah,
it still exists. He can play rook c1.
He could play b5 and try to take this thing. And
that's
now
really Wow.
It doesn't work anymore. But it was just keeping an eye out on this rook takes d6 sack. It said Nihal has 10 seconds.
Look at the time. Yeah, that's great. That is, I mean, and the position is not rook takes b6, bishop c7 he wants to play.
Okay.
That's
And then
a
bishop
really
e3.
cool
Then bishop
idea.
e3. You take back on b6. And
With the fork.
Yeah. That might
then
actually.
Maybe you take and go rook d7. How bad is that is the question.
I'm wondering the same exact thing.
He does do it. He has d6
Oh, he has rook b5. Rook b5.
Oh, the same idea. Oh, wow. It's incredible. And he'll find it. He's got time.
The rook on a7 is still hanging back there. So rook b5 is a move that saves rook. He plays d6.
Goes d6? No, that's definitely a concession. Okay, and he goes b5. Now he finally exploits that rook. He's still dominating here, I would say.
Yeah, he could play b4. Oh, but then a takes b5. So do not play b4. That actually hangs the pawn.
Yep.
So what?
Oh, AB, right. The rook is undefended.
Yeah, and thankfully his
rook c1 maybe?
Rook c1 looks really nice, just attacking this bishop. You don't want to trade too many pieces for white because what you ideally want to do is swing your rook to c8 and then over to h8, like start winning some of the kingside pawns. So keeping pressure on both sides of the board. So, but wait, a takes b5.
He blundered it. Will Nihal say it? He does. Yeah. That's a big time swing. Now rook a7, bishop d3. Oh, but then knight c6. And you can't even take the pawn. That was a big blunder.
It really was. A rook c8, rook h8, still a possibility, but that black knight can go d7 to f8 to not only protect h7, but shut your rook off from getting back in the game.
Wow, wow, wow.
Uh-oh.
This is incredible. Now the only thing, 4 seconds, bishop c6 with threat and checkmate. Bishop takes b4. It opens up that square for the king. He's got 1 second. He's got to move.
We barely got that off. And bishop, oh, here goes bishop 6.
Oh. And he allows, bishop c5.
Man, king f3.
Coming from all.
Oh, wait. There's got to be something here. So
there is. Oh, the knight is hanging. The knight is hanging.
The knight was just hanging.
Oh, rook king e4 wins, and Sarana keeps the foot on the gas pedal.
King e4 and mate next move with bishop d5.
Wow.
Take on Positional, only idea. Bishop e7 check.
That was incredible resistance, but I mean, too little time.
Yeah, bishop g5 it's unfortunately for Nihal, it's over. And honestly, 1-1 feels about right thus far. Both players coming up with really good, interesting ideas. Nihal almost saved that game. And for Sarana, when he has more time, he cannot miss moves like a takes b5. He's far too strong to overlook that.
Right, I completely agree, and we know that he apportions his time very well. But as you say, he's got to use it properly in the critical moments. And Nihal was very sharp in time pressure. Unfortunately, when you've got 5 seconds and there's a lot of pieces on the board, your king is weak. It's humanly impossible to defend against all of the threats at the same time.
And Nihal Sarin plays a different line this time. He played knight b5 in the first game. Now he brings the bishop back to d2. And Sarana castles. I was drawing arrows and knight takes e4 would have met by queen g4. Clearly there's some sort of theoretical sequence that I can't pretend to know. But Nihal playing very quickly with the white pieces in both games thus far.
Yeah, both of them seem relatively comfortable. Now a6. What to make of this position? Again, 2 bishops for white. White has some pressure on the center. He can play f4. But obviously, he's got that deficiency in the queenside pawn structure. Black's got a nice queen on a5. He goes f3, a more measured approach, reinforcing that pawn on e4.
Yeah, f3 is saying, I don't want my queen tied down there, and just in case you play b5, bishop b7, have any ideas of that, not going to allow you to hurt my center. So the e4 pawn and the f3 pawns restrict the knight on f6. You've talked many times with the superfluous knights, knight on d7, knight on f6. Not quite the case here because this knight probably does want to go to c5 or even e5 into c4. So Black's knights are all right for now, but I prefer the potential of the bishops.
Right, I agree. If you can stabilize the situation, bring the pieces in. Another maneuver to keep in mind is the queen from e2 can do a lot of different things. It can go from f2 to h4 potentially. And here we see Nihal allowing Sarana to take the bishop. But that corrects White's pawn structure. I would still very seriously consider it, though.
I think
now the d5 square is weakened.
Right. I think he threw an e5 as a means of just gaining space and opening this bishop on c8. He can play bishop e6 as well. So if he would prefer not to trade the knight for the bishop, but keep this knight on c5, it cannot be attacked by a pawn, so it's a pretty good square for it. And keeping the pawn structure ruined for white, then bishop e6 is an idea.
Maybe
but then
c4.
Then? Exactly. We're about to say the same thing.
He takes it.
Oh, b3.
Yeah, I noticed that, but somehow I thought what I didn't realize is that, okay, so he goes after the pawn. Somehow I thought black's king would experience trouble. What Nihal is trying to do is go perhaps bishop c3 or rook b1.
Yeah, rook b1.
Yep, and takes b7. But maybe queen a2, rook d8, maybe something like this. Is his idea?
I can always plug my knight
Knight
on
d5. Yeah, plunk it in there.
Yeah, this is happening, and black has no means of stopping it thanks to the c4 e4 bind.
And he does it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a successful outcome. Don't go queen a3 because of bishop d4. So black's choices are limited, I think, to queen a4 and queen a2. Wait a minute, queen a2. The queen is almost trapped.
I was thinking the same thing, but there is queen b2, queen d4.
There is, but maybe something he didn't like about that, or he wants to bring the queen back to c6, potentially, or keep it on a4 to pressure c4. Rook f8 comes to mind.
True, and there's still, I guess knight d5, you can take queen takes c4. So it plays rook to b8.
Okay, trying to get the rook out of the picture.
And you can bring the other rook to defend, but you have to watch out for your back rank.
You do.
It's not like you're going to get checkmated, just you don't want to allow black's forces in. And Danny, one important thing here is that even if that pawn on b7 had remained, if this knight is traded off on d5, you get this protected passed pawn there. That's just a big problem for black to deal with for the rest of the game.
I love me a protected passed pawn. Another thing to deal with, that pawn on a6, that is an outside passer. So you want to be careful about trading too many pieces for white. That's very far in the future, but this is something I've actually learned from you, Grandmaster Hess, is forecasting, constantly what will happen in an endgame, what will happen in a pawn endgame, what will happen in the event of a liquidation. And that pawn on a6, it may seem insignificant, but it could bring black some sort of advantage. Of course, I like Nihal's position here. He can consider knight d5. He can also bring his rook in via d1. Complimented Robert Hess again.
Well, we both like the position dynamically for white, but I'm with you that the long term, like if you just deal with your king, the king looks very safe on g8, but with a knight on d5, you always have to look out for that. The bishop on c3 also trying to stare through the pawn on e5 to the g7 square. So if the king gets safe, you don't have to be alert for tactics and forks. Then this a pawn down the line is certainly a useful pawn. It's kind of weak at the moment, but in the future, it could be a huge strength.
Yeah, exactly. And where there's positional chess, you have to speak in a Russian accent. It makes me sound like I actually know what I'm talking about, which I usually don't, for the record.
You definitely do. You just, don't be so hard on yourself.
Thank you. Well, queen a3, it seems like Sarana knows what he's talking about and what he's playing about, because bishop takes d5 is now a threat, winning the bishop. Obviously, Nihal sees that. He's thinking about how to defend against it. Rook a1 comes to mind. Then maybe queen c5 check. That's what concerns me and probably him. Something like that, followed by, bishop takes d5 even?
Yeah.
Okay, he plays it.
So if your queen to c5, there's no way to block with the white queen because then you drop the c4 pawn, right? So here's the check, and the queen needs to stay protecting this pawn. So bishop d5, e d5. How do you rate that?
I don't know. I mean, you could take and go f. That e5 pawn is what impedes black from playing knight b6 and attacking c4 immediately. You could take and go f6, and the a6 is, I think, basically untouchable due to the back rank, due to rook b1 check. But you give white connected and protected passers. That's never something to do with an easy heart.
Although there's a very kind of forcing sequence here: bishop d5, e d5, rook c8. Like you're getting after this c4 pawn. And
interesting.
h6, I think that white should respond in kind to defend this king on h1. You can also move your bishop away because you would prefer to take on d5 with the c pawn because you want your base pawn, and when you have a protected base pawn, you want it to be defended and easier to defend. And here after bishop d5, e d5, you're left with this suspicious looking c4 pawn in light of rook c8.
Yeah, it's like both of these players are fighting a war, but h3, h6, they got to eat their sandwiches for lunch. You gotta eat my BLT here. All right, let's continue fighting.
Yeah, you learned from Onishuk very well. There's you got to take that bite.
Sandwiches.
The war rages on.
I'm just too nervous. When you have the opening ceremony of the U.S. Championship, I'm finding, am I going to play Nakamura in the first round or Kamsky? And the sandwiches just don't taste as well. When you're going to play, Hikaru with black or something the next day.
Yeah, it's you don't get to eat a stress-free meal, that's for sure. And Rook B3 was played.
Can we stop talking about food? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
Or I'm gonna have to get on DoorDash.com rather than Chess.com.
This bishop on c3 is hanging thanks to bishop takes d5, removing the guard. You can play queen to c2, but then you drop the c4 pawn. So trying to highlight that black is immediately putting pressure on all these squares. So white has to be alert for that. And bishop to b2, well, then you're putting your bishop still in a square that can be attacked. So is bishop e1 the move? Rook a5 I can throw
bishop
in.
e1 I like. But rook a5, rook b1, and queen g1 maybe.
And I was just gonna run my king away, but I wasn't. not my king, so I can just run it over to
Fair
g3.
enough. No, I like that idea though.
You know, I was like, hey, do I actually care about this?
Okay, bishop f2. Bishop f2. Yeah. Oh, king g3. I thought we were talking about that position. Bishop f2 is the idea now.
Yes. But it's not my king. Well, it's on g3. We're having a party. It probably was quite bad.
Knight b6 now is an idea. No, I can't find a check. Sometimes the king, paradoxically, Robert, is safest when it's on a square like g3.
That's what I was claiming. I don't think it's the case in that particular variation, but I'm just trying to make a broader point.
Accept my compliments.
Okay, I will this time. So queen on d4 hits the rook on a1. If that rook takes on a6, there is that rook b. There's still rook b1.
There is. And I guess rook d2 is the idea. Queen a1.
And queen a1.
Watch out.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to go king h2 maybe, our favorite move, and he does.
And thankfully for Nihal, he has bishop f2, which hits the queen and defends these squares on the first rank. So I'm starting to like his position. I'm starting to really think that he's the one pressing. The knight on d7 is dominated by this knight on d5. And if you ever take, as we've talked about many, many times now, just cd, and that's a pass pawn.
Yeah, there's some mutually assured destruction in regards to these two passed pawns. They can both disappear from the board, and if they do, there might be a draw, but their position can still be full of life. I mean, if the queens come off the board and the pawns come off the board, okay, I think it's going to be a dead draw. But we'll see how this is handled. So he takes on a6.
So take on c4 with the queen, and then draw.
Maybe draw. Yes, I think so.
Feels like that, but white is like a little faster, maybe.
Little pull, yes. Rook d6, okay, some pressure, okay, but no, but it's not. I don't think it's serious pressure. I think, and Sarana, he's got that 30-second advantage, and we talked about this last match. It might not seem significant, but it allows him to generate accurate defenses and, when necessary, pose a lot of problems. Knight f8 comes to mind as a possibility here. I know that looks very artificial, but you want to go f6 and like king f7.
Yeah.
He goes king f8. Ooh.
So bishop b4 does not work because of bishop. Well, that's actually just mass trade.
Right.
It's like we just take, and you take my bishop.
Bishop g3 maybe, but okay, this is all very symbolic pressure. He goes for it.
So you can't play f6. Don't hang your bishop. That would be silly.
Wait, why not? Oh, just kidding.
There's actually, it looks
Rook
like
d4, bishop e5.
Oh, that would be.
Oh, that was hanging.
Bishop e5 was hanging directly because the back rank made good call. Instead, we see some trades, and e5 is hanging, so rook c5.
They're always able to generate some, some pressure, but I think this is all very easily resolvable. And we have
don't walk your king onto the dark squares.
King e7, yeah.
Yeah, that would be foolish.
Yeah. So king d7, bishop e4. We're going to see a rook trade.
Oh, but there's bishop f8. Watch out, because the white can win a pawn.
But okay, still, I mean, okay.
Still
I would say,
definitely
but g6, but. Here's the thing, that e5 pawn being on a dark square is what really hurts black, because you plant a bishop on g7 there, and you're never entirely sure that it's a draw.
True. And f6 has the same problem. Rook b7 check. You would be forced to play rook c7. I take, and bishop f8 at the end. So look at this.
That's already crazy. He's able to rook c2. I would go rook c2. That would go for full activity.
No, but there's bishop f8 there.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull my bishop on f8. This is... Okay, Sarana's going to move.
Got 1 second.
Oh my gosh, rook b7 check.
He goes for the end game, but wait a minute, he might lose 2 pawns. It's a great call, Robert. Bishop
so
c7, f5 is what he's going to go for. He's going to go for f5. Oh. No, he gives this pawn up. I don't like that. King g3, king h4, king g5.
Isn't the king just...
And then, well, bishop e8.
Okay. This is really hard to defend with seconds in your clock.
But what is White's plan of improvement? I would walk the king
h4.
to g7.
He wants to go g4, but do not take. Do not take this pawn on g4.
Yeah, because that allows a passer. But first, I would make the improvements exactly.
Oh, king f8.
King f8, that might be Zugzwang.
Yeah, bishop f7, king f8.
e7 forced.
Wait, king d6. Thank you. King
f4 and f5, it wins.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable technique by
f5 check, and then king g. Okay, it takes.
Okay, king h5. That works.
Easy enough. Yeah.
That is incredible. How did he do that?
He's just He just posed. You said this about
He
Sarana.
posed from, so you can
When
see Sarana
Sarana
is
has
not
more
thrilled.
time, right? When he has more time, he's the one posing these little problems. But this is what Nihal did in this game: is he was the opportunist. He said, "Hey, your pawn on g7, your pawn on h6, dark squares. My bishop is too powerful on
You
h7.
called
Thank
it.
you. This is it. Wow."
And you never say never. You spot the smallest deficiencies in your opponent's position. That's exactly what modern chess is, and that's just flat out impressive with almost no time on the clock.
Yeah, just one of those positions from Black's point of view in that game where you know you should hold a draw. Like you know for
You know,
certain, but you're like, wait, Bishop f8, that scares me. And then he plays that move f6 and forcing the rooks off the board, and then he loses one pawn. Then he doesn't have enough time to figure out the exact proper defensive maneuvers. So here we have a new game starting out with the white pieces. I once again prefer his position, but we are still pretty early on. He has
yeah.
the fianchetto bishop, the more advanced position. However, down to this bishop on a6 is always annoying.
It always is. It's pesky. It's pressuring c4. And I was just going to say a book could be written about the end games, only the end games in the JSCC, Robert. I mean, we've been treated to some incredible displays, both in terms of defending and attacking. And yeah, I mean, what to make of this position? Well, knight takes d5 always has to be reckoned with. That's an idea in such positions. I mean, it has to be considered even here, but d bishop d5, knight e5, I don't like. I feel like Nihal has stabilized the boat here, but it's never entirely equal. It might be equal objectively, but what I wanted to say is there's always some intrigue when it comes to the queen side. Things could happen there on the c file.
Yeah, and also because white's pawn's on b3, which is somewhat atypical of these sort of exchange Slav type of positions, the black queen can actually start making progress here, and the bishop on a6 is well placed. Earlier on, you're like, well, the bishop on a6, is that really where it wants to be? But the answer is yes, because there's no knight b5, and it's harder for white to make inroads here. And actually, this looks completely
Yeah.
symmetrical, but
Okay, I was trying to build it up.
I do think that black can play a little bit here. I mean, because of the dark
Yeah.
squares. I think that what black has the light squares under
Queen
control,
b4?
whereas exactly a move like queen b4 could be a bit frustrating.
Yeah, I was considering queen before. You've always got to watch out for knight takes d5, for example. But yeah, queen takes d2. That clearly doesn't work.
Right.
The question after queen b4 is how do you actually improve the position? Let's say white simply passes the move, like king g2 or something. What is black's? Do you see anything for black there?
That's the essential question. That's what we're trying to do. Let's say king g2. Like, how do I pile up more pressure? But I think that there will be a knight e4 jump because you take with the knight. Typically, that would be good for white because your knight, oh, I stole a piece. I get your queen back, but the c2 rook is hanging. So there will be knight e4 type of jumps because of all the pressure down the c file. So I actually think that
Right.
queen e4 is a very direct threat of knight e4 because if bishop takes, pawn takes, in comes this bishop to d3, and well, thank you for all the squares on the board.
Indeed, that was very well explained. And I think, okay, king g2, king g7, the sandwiches, the BLTs, gotta get the Rubin. Okay, let's keep fighting down the c file. White can move his knight also away from c3. That's not impossible.
I think that's the smartest thing to do because queen b4 can get you under some trouble, some pressure there. So I think moving the knight away, making essentially this is how I'll frame it down, and I've heard this from many strong grandmasters. If the game is likely going to be a draw, but you can get yourself into some trouble, make the draw. And we've seen many famous examples of that where instead of just forcing the pieces off and accepting your fate, you say, "Oh, I can try," and then oftentimes you get yourself into more trouble than it's worth. And here, trading one pair of rooks alleviates a lot of the pressure in the position, and I think that ultimately we will see the players keep an even game.
Yeah, and those are some of the most sleepless nights I've had, Robert, in tournaments. When I've overpressed these kinds of positions, it's excruciating when you can't get out of your own way. There's a voice in your head that says, "All right, time to make a draw, time to wind things down. I can press for free. I can make all of these improvements." Boom, the game turns. You lose a position that you would have never dreamed of losing.
Exactly, and I mean the pawn structure completely symmetrical. There's no
Wow.
weaknesses anywhere.
There is
And
one thing.
what is it?
Sorry, knight d1. Let's say rook takes c2, queen b5, queen f1. But even that is okay. But the g4 square is also weak. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. You made a very good point that actually this bishop on c4 now is better than the counterpart on f3. So I'm starting to buy that. Nihal's position is looking slightly better, just easier to play, and I don't see any problems with Black's position in particular.
And he is, I mean, we mentioned his versatility. He's very sharp calculationally, but he's also very mature and obviously as a person, but also as a player, he's able to generate these small chances and slowly kind of twist the knife turn by turn. B5 here, then G5, and you start to doubt the safety of White's king and the health of his queen side as well.
Yeah, what I do like for Sarana is his clock management. We're going to say this very often, and we have throughout the JSCC. But Bishop B3 played by Nihal. Rook C7, Queens on Queen C3 probably should just be, hey, that's where the score sheets get signed, right? Oh, but there's Queen C4 type possibilities.
Or Bishop C4. I would not trade. Yeah, Bishop C4, B5. And here's the thing. No, I would consider. Okay. I would say okay. Queen takes C3, Robert. Why were you saying he should play Bishop C4? I told you he was going to trade queens. That was the best thing. But Black can still try to make a couple of moves. He's got that C4 square. Maybe he sees something in the position.
Like 98, knight d6, hop that knight around into c4. That would be the dream.
I called this. I said he would trade queens. He wouldn't go Bishop C4. I true to my nickname.
So what can either side do here? Because I just don't see anything.
98, knight d6.
Maybe f3, king to f2, like stuff like that. It just doesn't seem like it gets you anywhere.
I feel like, but what do you do exactly after 98, knight d6, knight c4? Do you just go a4?
Probably go f4 at some point would be an idea. But you're right. A knight's coming to d6 and into c4. Like, who cares with the g5 pawn?
You know what else he might be thinking about?
No.
I don't either. I was trying to desperately. Okay, 98. There we go.
Yeah, 98 felt like the move there. And so, okay, knight d6, knight c4. I'm trying to think, even if you get what you're looking for, can I just push my pawn to a4? How bad is that? I think that has the potential to be very bad. A pawn on the light square against this light square bishop. So if this pawn gets to a4 and stuck there, then this bishop comes to c2, the knight gets in the game, and that could actually be a big problem.
Right, and you called it there. Comes
no,
f4.
But you saw the bar; it went immediately in Black's favor because we talked about
because the e3 pawn is hanging.
And who cares about g5, right? Knight d6, knight c4.
Oh, you draw the king out, and now knight c4 is going to be a fork. How do you defend the pawn? You go e4, I guess, but man. Then knight e3, knight c2, Robert, potentially.
Well, my big question is, do you start with a5 to cement this pawn on a light square, or do you just keep going forward, knight c4, and then e4, as you're saying, you give yourself an isolated pawn, not good for the endgame?
I'm not sure. This is a very tough decision because a5, if you win that a pawn, it's all but over. If you have an outside passer in this kind of endgame, you're going to win. So that's a very tempting move. The problem with a5 is after takes, the moment you go, okay, goes knight c4.
Yeah, because your move knight e3, knight c2 hits both D.
Yeah, but d5 is also hanging, so you've got to take on e4 there in the middle. But you could take on e4 and then go knight c2.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
Man, Nihal's technique too smooth right now.
Karpovian. I mean, this is just he's squeezing out just one little deficiency in White's position, square on c4. And the presence of mind, I think, to trade queens, of course, Sarana could have defended better, without a doubt. But I think he understood that there was more to the position than met the eye. Yes. Very, very impressive.
And he brings his bishop out, take on e4. If the bishop's trade on e4, there's knight c2 at the end still. I mean, look at these pawns out here. They just have wandered a bit too far.
Yeah, knight takes and knight c2. Things are burning there on the queen side. Now, if you're Sarana, how do you defend this? You give up the pawn strategically, but which one? You give up the d pawn. Yeah, b5.
So after knight c2, you play
knight
d5.
d5 also possible, by the way.
Oh, that's actually better because this f4 pawn is more important than d4 pawn, in my opinion.
I agree.
So knight d5, if b5, you take on f4, and now you just... Oh, and then knight comes to c8. You're trying to make a statement that once this knight gets to c8, these pawns over here are not so good.
Yeah, but the black knight comes to c3 and takes a4. So knight d5 or knight e2 here?
Knight e2 is more forcing.
I would go knight e2 to 4, yeah, of course, knight c8. And then, yeah, he goes knight c5. I don't think it really matters because White's going to have to go knight c8 anyway, I think.
Yeah.
And then you go knight c3, takes. And it's a 50-50 game. I would say that black has excellent winning chances there, but it could also end in a draw.
Well, the knight on a4 stuck for. Well, you can go knight c3, knight b6, knight b5, and then there's d5. So that's actually a pretty critical sequence. That if white is able to trade off this d pawn for this e pawn, if these two come off, then it feels like white's chances get all of this. 97 check coming.
d5.
Yeah, this is
and that
what
was
I was claiming.
Quickly played too in 16 seconds. Now, what Nihal can try to do is go after that b pawn with his king. The problem, white could potentially give his knight up for the b pawn. His king will come to h5. This should be a draw. Something is telling this should be a draw, but it's not easy.
No, not easy at all, because if you play knight b4, there's like king d4, king c5. So
okay.
you have to do a count. You say, wait, is my king getting here?
You bring your knight to a8 maybe.
I was thinking about that, so you can sack on b6. That seems weird. Like knight c7.
And you go g5. Knight a8, king c5, g5.
So,
and then you get your king to f6, and then the fastest, you don't go king h5 because that takes longer.
You're
and
right.
that's what Nihal is thinking about.
That's why he went here.
Yep.
Knight d5? No, it doesn't work.
Then you take king f4 maybe, but then it's a draw, king h6, and
he's got to move f5 played.
Yeah,
okay, this is in a draw by agreement. King h6, knight a8, and then take on b6, take on b5. Oh.
I think they should play this out. They're not playing in a very combative. I don't know what I signed up for. Why am I commentating this tournament? Taking quick draws. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous.
Well, Diana, this is why you signed up for it. Can you guess how old Alexey Sarana is in this image?
Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm overcome. I would say 8.
Okay.
And I don't actually know. No. I see what the producer wants to show. I forbid it.
Let's show it.
I forbid it.
No, we're going to show it.
Fine.
How old
my
do we
mom
think?
Really likes this photo.
How old do we think you were? Don't tell us. I have no idea. You must have.
I actually need to remember. I have a ballpark estimate. I don't know. This is in my room at home, actually.
Were you 9?
I think I was 9. Yeah.
Wow, what a guess! Let's go.
Amazing.
Oh, that's so cute.
It's gonna make me blush. Yeah, this is a good photo. I remember these camps that Gary Kasparov would host for talented, quote unquote talented young players that I had the privilege of attending. That was come on, this is too much.
I love it. People saying Danya coaching Gary.
Right.
Oh man.
No, I had that face of 10 years from now, I'll be commentating. 15 years from now, I'll be commentating with Robert Hess.
And you're like, wow, my life is going to be terrible.
I know. That's exactly what I was thinking. Gary saved me from this man.
Oh, well, look at this position, Dinah. There's a queen on c7, a rook on c1. Usually the rook wins the stare down with a queen and an open line. I'm looking at knight d5 type ideas, where if you take, I take, and there's a pin on the knight on c6. So bishop g5, step 1. Let's challenge this knight on f6. And if you are Sarna, how are you dealing with that immediate threat?
Well, the question is, do you deal with it by reacting? Because bishop takes f6, gf, knight d5. I mean, he goes a6, so he forces it from the other side. Now Nihal has a decision. Bishop f6, Robert, even here is possible. Because if you take the other bishop, then of course white has queen g4. Nasty little move.
Oops.
In fact, winning on the spot. g5, queen h6, lobster pincer mate. And there's no stopping it. Yeah, well, bishop f6, gf. Now, what I was mentioning is that once black's king shifts to h8 and his rook comes to g8, I know the pawn structure looks really bad, but these positions can turn really, really quickly.
I agree. But Daniel, one thing I'm looking at is he went bishop d3, but was there an opportunity with like a tactical sequence with knight d5 ideas anyway? So if you took on c6, took on f6, was there a knight d5 here? Because pawn takes, I have queen g4 check at the end.
Bishop on d7, I take on c6 with the pawn.
Oh, you took on c6 with the pawn. But then your pawn structure looks terrible here, right? Like a6 is hanging.
Yeah, but am I not up a piece there?
What are you talking about?
I thought, okay, we were talking about different things. So now I'm looking at your screen. Yeah. I thought you were still talking about knight d5.
No, I was
immediately
just taking
I got you.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a completely different line.
Got it. So bishop c6, bishop
totally
takes c6.
Now, that makes perfect sense, of course. Yeah. No, that's actually looked like a really interesting idea.
Yeah, now that we're on the same wavelength.
If Robert Hess hadn't proposed it, I would have advocated for it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I was just trying to point out that there is a pin on the bishop on c6 and queen g4 check will hit the other bishop. So it looks like you're regaining your sacrifice material and with interest because there's these weak pawns on the F file. So we didn't see any of that. He retreated his bishop to D3, which is still probably a good thing. Nihal taking the kind of the non-tactical approach, but
which is fine because he wants to play F4, E5, and if Sarana ever plays E5 himself, there isn't this equivalency between the D4 and D5 scores. White has easier access to it than black because black's, the bishop's counterpart is on D7 and not on E6.
Right. That's a very good point. That it's annoying for black because especially after F4, you want to play E5 to stop that pawn from E4 from pushing itself, but that gives up, it vacates the defense of the D5 square. And look at White's pieces, the third rank attack.
Yep.
These knights and bishops, all are just doing very well here.
You could slide the bishop to B1 prophylactically, just getting it out of the danger zone. That's not truly necessary yet. You could also, E5, he goes for the direct approach. He opens up the bishop. There are already some sacrifices I'd be thinking about once the rook gets to F3 on H7.
Right, so you can swing your rook to H7 check, with the queen to H5, and you can also start with bishop E4 here. Keep that bishop does so, safe and sound.
Queen H5, be careful, don't do that because of F5.
Good point. So it'll show queen F5 hits the queen, hits the bishop, no en passant for you.
Exactly. Now, is there a knight D4 for you? Probably not because of knight takes D4 and queen takes C1.
Yes, that would.
So that rook on B5, that's an interesting idea by Sarana, right? He's trying to change the course of the game. He's trying to get Nihal to think. And I would still consider going rook F3 here, just continuing with my kingside strategy. Goes king H1, stepping away for the time being.
He wants to go knight D4. Your idea spoke volumes to him because now knight D4, even though your queen on E2 is under attack, it's not under attack with check. So knight D4 takes rook C7. Knight E2 before would have checked your king on G1. Now you take the queen, I take the rook, and thank you for at least an extra exchange and probably more coming out.
Indeed, and knight D4, rook C5, there's knight takes E6. So, I mean, where does black even go? Rook B4, rook A5, but that is not a move you play, if you're in love with your position.
No, certainly not. So knight D4 just challenges black immediately to come up with a couple moves that save the day, but the first move is probably the easier one, like rook A5, for example. It's after that. Like, how do you continue to fend off what is mounting pressure? I would think about
play
F5
A3. You could sort of, he plays slowly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's very hard for black to even make a move here. I agree. I would start thinking about sacrifices along the lines of F5.
Right.
But also that rook on A5 could be trapped.
True. In F5, we're just trying to break open the position, but we do acknowledge the E5 pawn is hanging. We're talking kind of just as ideas. Even if the ideas don't work in the immediate position, it's good to have them, store them, figure out later. Yep.
Yeah, no, I think queen D1, but then rook can come back to A5, and I cannot quite fly into the crushing sequence.
Can you just take on C6, Danya, and just get a better pawn structure?
You absolutely can, and perhaps you should.
Like knight C6, bishop C6, takes, pawn takes. And hey, your pawn is here, so you have a weak queen side.
But something tells me that's not the most that I can squeeze out of the position. What Nihal has to be very careful about is not to take too much time. Here goes queen C2. Okay, now rook A5, what is his idea? Is rook A5 even forced? I think it is. And then you go... can't quite see it.
I want to go to knight B3, but then your rook goes to B5.
Somehow Sarana holds this together. You could go queen B3, and again, you can take on C6 as you proposed at the right moment. Queen B3 will threaten bishop B6 after that, by the way.
True. So, rook A5, queen B3, trying to get the bishop to the B6 square. And there's knight E6 sacrifices that at some point you can see queen F2.
Does, and again, he's got the threat of knight C6 or even potentially E6 and bishop B6.
All right, so
using
how do you stop
that square on B6?
How do you see? Rook A4 is one idea.
Yeah.
You might have to play rook A4.
But bishop C2, rook C4. Okay. Wow.
So, barely escaping.
Barely, but he does it. And you could double on the C file if you're Nihal. You could add some spice with rook C3, potentially.
But then the queen drops away from the C file. You start feeling...
But you double on the C file, I don't know. Yeah, one gets the sense that's not the most that White can do.
Right.
But you want to be practical in regards to your clock also.
Yeah, I'm really trying to find that knockout. Bishop F3. So he can move his knight, without dropping his bishop on e4. And the only place he could have moved the knight was to c6, which would have been fine. But now he can move his knight elsewhere and continue to go after this rook on a4.
Right, but I like the move queen b8, finally solving the problem of the pin. The knight on c6 can now move. It might be time for Nihal to say, all right, I'm going to take on c6. I'm going to relinquish the rook from my clutches. But no, he goes knight b3. Now, there is a positional component to this idea. If he goes knight c5, he may potentially force the trade, and those dark squares around black's king. Ugh.
Yeah, not good.
Bishop a7.
Bishop a7 was the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah,
but you just go queen a8, and it's not that big.
Yeah, exactly. Knight c5 maybe should be preferred.
Knight
I
c5.
don't know about what Nihal's doing. I mean, maybe it'll backfire, but I guess we'll see in the next couple of moves.
Yeah, this is. Well, the f4 pawn is also a little tender, actually. So if you play knight c5, maybe it'll just take you on c5 and win your f4 pawn. So the rook on that was on b5 and a5 and a4, it's doing a good job. So I would play knight d2 perhaps, because this configuration with rook a4, knight to a5, it's sort of offside, looks kind of questionable. So keeping the pieces on the board, he plays knight d2.
He does it, but after taking on c8.
Why would he?
Yeah,
what's
I'm
the
not
benefit?
sure. I honestly, I'm trying to figure out the same thing because he gives black the c file. Queen c2, bishop d1. I mean,
that's not what he wanted to play bishop d1, and with his rook on c1, he couldn't do that.
Oh, that makes sense because it would have been hanging.
Yeah, so he can play bishop d1. The rook goes to a5, knight to c4, for example. Looks really odd.
Knight e4 also.
Wait, that wins the exchange. Yeah, rook a5, knight
c4. Oh my goodness! Wait, but rook b5, bishop
then
a4.
Bishop a4, and then rook d5. There's knight b6. So here
amazing. He got to the rook at last.
It took a while, but he got
it. It did, but he got to it eventually. And that b6 square, it's killed black. First, the bishop threatened to appear there, and now the knight threatens to appear there. And Sarana loses the exchange. He's got to give it up in the most strategic way. Maybe drop his knight back to d8, for example, try to take on b5 with the bishop. But at that point, there's knight b6 with tempo. If Nihal even wants to unpin his knight, which he doesn't have to, he can play b3.
Exactly, or rook c1 and b3, some kind of
exactly
combination of those moves.
This is losing.
Whoa,
okay, whoa!
What's happening? If bishop
what if
b5,
he taken and bishop knight b6?
Knight b6 looks good.
I mean, queen c2.
No, queen c2. I just take on b4.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, queen d8. You have to give up the piece, I think, and go after. Okay, queen c6, rook c1 even there was possible.
I think it was smart by Sarana, all things considered.
Knight d3.
His position was losing, right? It's been lost, but this way at least, in 7 seconds for white, you need to figure things out. So bishop takes b4.
Bishop g1 is a great move, actually.
Yes.
Making everything safe. Now knight c8, knight d6 is a maneuver that comes to mind. You've got to do something with your knight. You've also got to do something. He's got 3 seconds.
Oh, nice move, pinning the knight. Just you creating little problems.
Trying his best.
Okay, queen c6. He could have been a3 at some point.
b5, knight d6. Okay, he's got to push his pawns, but he's got to watch his king also to Sarana. That's easier said than done. He's got no pieces to do it with.
And this should just be absolutely frustrating.
Yeah. Queen b7.
Queen b7.
He's got to move. Oh.
He barely got that move off.
6 seconds.
Oh my gosh, he really has
my
to move.
lands.
Play king f8.
He's got a pre-move. There we go.
Just play any move.
Yeah. And so does Sarana. Bishop d4. That's
queen f7.
Queen
queen e6.
And you can trade queens, go g4, f5.
Yes, he can.
But, f5 wins. And takes f6, b4, f7. He promotes in time. Yep. What a game. Wow.
He almost lost on time there. He made a move
that was
with 0.6
seconds. Yeah, when you see that clock dipping below a second, that's where I start just getting really nervous.
And that worried me for sure, but if you're a Nihal Sarin fan, you're like, well, I mean, he is
another day at the office.
Bullet. Yeah, just
he knows what he's doing.
Casual bullet scramble. And Nihal getting out to the fast start in the longer time controls, that does spell big trouble for Alexey Sarana, because Sarana won his match against Jeffrey in the longer time controls. What's up?
Sorry, this is theory, but if you go back to move 11, I thought knight h4 won the queen. But then I remembered it is a line because of knight takes d4.
Right. So you.
Sorry, not every day do you see the queen getting trapped move 10. That's why I get excited.
No, it's good to keep an eye on that because you can mix up your lines and then that would actually trap the queen. So instead we see black castled, fully developed. The bishop on c8, not exactly the best piece in the world, but white has these issues on the king side. You play g4, but you're not getting an attack, and so maybe that created more weak squares than it was worth.
Right. Something like e5 comes to mind. Now, in reference to your point about the 5-minute segment going Nihal's way, I think Sarana's playing decently. I don't think he's showing necessarily bad form. But with that being said, what Nihal is doing so well is exploiting small advantages. We saw this game after game. First that c5 square, then that rook, which was misplaced, but he thought to persistently try to trap it, and eventually he succeeded. And this ability to capitalize on small advantages is, it's the hallmark of an incredibly talented player. And Sarana is going to have to tighten up his play a little bit if he is to right the ship here.
Yeah, he does. And this position, the two bishops, there's potential here. That's what we're going to talk about. That white has long-term potential, and black, if you just sit and do nothing, then the advantage for white will increase because moves like rook c1, eventually trying to play e4, that's all going to be nice for white. The knight at c6 is kind of stuck where it is. It would love to go a5 to b3, for example, but then the e5 square is given up, and you do not want to see that white knight land there with the bishop on g2 opening up. So I do believe that white holds the advantages in this position, and I'm not quite certain, Donnie, maybe you can tell me, like, what should black's
E5.
strategy be in the next bunch of moves?
I would go for some sort of sacrifice, e5, de, knight f4. I would do it here. I would do it in like 4 seconds. I'd play e5, and again, because I love sacrificing other people's pieces. I know Nihal's style can be sometimes more measured than that, but I would not be able to resist. I'm going to tell you that right now. I would go e5 here.
So I'm just going to point out that Danya is trying to take advantage of the rook staring down the queen. So in the event of e5, if you take with the pawn or the knight, let's say we trade knights and you go knight f4, this is a little bit different, and that's why I took with the knight on e5. So I gave my bishop a square, but Danya's just pointing out that the bishop on d2 is pinned to the queen on d1, and thus black has a ton of counterplay for the sacrifice pawn.
And I'm not pretending like black isn't worse. He's worse. But you have to identify the moments. The other idea that I thought was rook a6, rook b6, but that seems a little bit more artificial to me. You have to identify a moment when, okay, you tell yourself, I'm going to change the course of the game. I'm going to make my opponent sweat a little bit. But with this time disparity, if Nihal sort of just hunkers down, I don't see this going well for him at all.
But if he plays e5 with the time difference that we see right now, I mean, it just feels like that also can be problematic. And I do want to point out once more that taking with the knight on e5 for white is important, because after e5, de, knight f4, now my bishop on g2 doesn't have anywhere to go. So that's a huge problem, that the bishop on d2 is pinned, otherwise you lose the queen, and the bishop on g2 would have to go back to f1 if you're going to keep it. So that's why I'm taking with the knight on e5, if e5 is indeed played.
Right. That's a great point. And with every passing second, things are getting more concerning for Nihal. He's 2.5 minutes down the clock. And you said it, Robert. Okay, he goes bishop d7. He was definitely considering e5 for, I would say, the entirety of this time.
Yes, but now that he's played bishop b7, it's so clear that white has the
that's an
position.
admission that things have gone very wrong in the opening. He's probably going to put his bishop on e8. We know how good Nihal is at holding these positions together. He's going to be very hard to bring down. But with this time disparity, we also know that Sarana is a monster in terms of posing problems in opponents' time pressure in this kind of position.
Daniel, he's good at holding these positions from black side of things. I am not. So that's why, as a commentator, I'm kind of like looking at this. And if this were a classical game of chess, I'd be sitting there, my head in my hands, completely miserable. I can't do anything, and I have to be worried. Is e4 coming right now? Oh, wait, not yet. It's just e3. Then after e3, can you just build it up? And how can I actually create some active play for myself? Your rook a6, rook b6 idea, that certainly comes to mind. And I think that's what Nihal will need to do if he is going to avoid being just ground down.
Yeah, f6, bishop g6, and right. One of these maneuvers to slightly enliven his position. He goes f6.
Yeah, I would even think about the exchange sack on c6.
Absolutely. And that seems like a very interesting idea. But at least that unbalances the position. Black's goal here is to breathe some doubt into White's, into Sarana's mind about his capacity to win this game. E5, by the way, still exists. Maybe not here. I mean, that creates so many weaknesses. 97. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do like that this bishop's on e4, though. That went from c8 to d7 to e8 to g6 to e4.
Nice, kind of in a diamond shape.
Yeah.
Rhomboid shape.
A very French-like idea.
Rhomboid, and knight c6. Okay, so what does he accomplish? He traded the bishops, definitely in black's favor. Sarana's getting his knight, I think, to d3.
Okay, and then what?
Well, you tell me, Robert.
I'm trying to figure that out because I still like white's position. I just don't know how to make progress. Because e4, we talked about this in a previous
yeah, we did. Now the knight can come to b5. Those knights in this kind of close position, Robert, are very jumpy. You know, they can all of a sudden put tremendous pressure on a pawn. I like the way things are going here for Nihal.
And the f4 square is under control thanks to...
Ooh,
missed
wait
that
a minute.
Move. Nice.
You could sack an exchange here and go, nah, that doesn't work because the rook penetrates to a7. So I would go rook d7. But then maybe takes in d5. That's not good.
Yeah, the knight on e7 actually is well positioned to meet d5 as it protects c6, so you don't have to shatter your own pawn structure. This pawn a4, though, Danya, that's one that may have extended a little bit too far, but so is this pawn on d4 now that the e-pawn has pushed.
There's two ideas. One is g5, knight g6, knight f4. And the other is knight c8, knight c6. And this idea of putting it as soon as the knight appears on f4, boy, oh boy, is there going to be trouble for white, potentially. I would go g5 here.
I would also play g5. Because you do need g5 because you play knight g6 right away, king g3, and then, wait,
yeah,
I want to get to f4, but I can't.
You want to secure that square for yourself. Now, white can protect that square with his knight, but that would mean making the knight more passive, let's say on g2.
Yeah, not good. Not what you want.
So what is Nihal thinking about here? Well, there's other moves. He can double on the d file, but I would go for active defense. Okay, he does double on the d file.
Yeah, the a4 pawn is hanging immediately, so you can take that, but you lose d4. So you lose your
but rook d1, b5.
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a problem. For sure.
Knight c2 maybe should be preferred, but then you go, yeah, exactly. That's exactly the kind of sound. I would e5 even. Sack that pawn on a4 and get that e5 here and get that knight a4, e5.
Yeah, e5 looks very good. And actually, after de, you can throw in b5 if you really want.
Right. Okay.
This is
where I prefer e5, but I guess you can go it now.
No, Diner, this is where the time is very important because Nihal doesn't have enough time to start calculating things like pushing the pawn to b5. What are the consequences?
I'm not sure why he didn't target that f4 square, honestly. It seems like he doesn't have it in his sights. And I feel like this, by and large, lets Alexey off the hook here. But still, even if he puts his knight on b5, this makes perfect sense as well, of course.
Yeah, but the rook on a8 tied to the defense of the a4 pawn. So it's a frustrating position if you're Nihal. When you have 20 seconds left, you're like, do I play c5? Do I play e5? You can't play c5. Knight's hanging. Can I play e5? No, I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
And he's not quite coming up with a clear plan. b5, knight c4 is not going to happen because this knight can always go to e3. So you want to look where the outposts are. And then from Sarana's point of view, you're trying to stop that. Like you said, the f4 square, the c4 square on the other side of the board is one. You want to keep that knight out as well.
And here comes knight e3, improving the position.
And knight b5 is met with d5, so don't do that. D5 is still possible.
He's starting to take the air out of black's coordination here. D5 maybe
F4 as well. Just like just push these things.
Yep, and then the king can slide over to F3 and protect E4 if necessary. Nihal keeps shifting the knight. You could go rook c4 and
rook c4, then rook d8 because if you take on a4 at b5.
b5, that's a good call. H4, so he does something similar to what you said, driving the pawn to h5. But here comes Nihal attacking the pawn.
Okay, so knight c2.
And then maybe that's too much. I would still go e5 there. I mean, that idea still exists. Knight c2 e5 and try to get that knight over to f4.
I like the idea,
which I think Nihal was better had he done that.
I completely agree, but I think he's not quite certain that it will work in his favor, and with no time, he can't figure out he's played rook 8. Oh, he played b5. Okay, good.
b3.
That was a good move by Alexey.
Still d5. I mean, this idea has existed for all. He goes g5. Now h5 is possible covering that square, but Alexey takes it. He wants the tempo, and he wants the h file, and he gets it.
The knight can't move without dropping c6.
Rook a7 maybe, get the rook around. He defends c6 instead.
So there's some e5 could be a timely shot to kick the rook away from the defense of the c6 pawn. The knight is covering it for now, but if the knight moves away, then e5 could be an idea. But I just don't see the exact sequence that takes advantage. So knight b4 is also an idea, just to go right after c6 and give up d4, but that should be liquidation.
Right, and he's sort of waiting for that to happen, so we're not poking and prodding 6 seconds on the clock to a minute. Alexey, okay, he goes knight b4, there we go. Now, what are we going to see here? White is definitely the one playing here for a win, especially with 2 seconds. What does Black do? Does he trade a pair of rooks?
E5. Oh, rook E6. Take E6.
Yeah, and then take B5, and F6 is going to be weak. This does not look good. But Nihal does have this idea of doubling on the second rank. That's going to be a mate threat.
It will be,
but E5, E5.
E5 always, yeah, just take on it. But E5, there still might be rook to D2.
Rook to D2, and King F7. Well,
yeah.
Might be winning there.
E5 watch out. Now. You have to be very careful. Now. But it's mate. It's
rook B6 is winning, and Sarana. Well, is this easily winning, though? Because somehow White's king is boxed in.
It's a draw. I've seen this position before.
And like F4, you go rook E3.
Yes, this is a draw. It's like a Van Welle game or something.
This is amazing. I've seen something similar before, but this is still amazing to me. There isn't even an attempt here.
No, you go rook F5, king G6. You just have no moves. The only moves that White has is king H3, king G3. You're not getting out of this.
Well, he's got to give up E5, it seems, and make a couple moves there. But that's a dead draw. With the pawns arranged the way that they are, other than F4, there's no attempt.
Yeah, because rook F6, king G7, you can't push your E pawn because it needs to stay defending this rook on F6. So this has been seen before, and it's a draw.
Wow. That is crazy to think of this with almost no time on the clock. F4, rook E3, that's the key detail. And I think Sarana's coming to terms with it right now.
Yeah, this is okay. So king F7. You just have to make sure you don't drop your G5 pawn. That would be tragic.
Exactly. This is White's really only attempt in Black's time pressure. Try to get the king to... I've seen this position be lost before when the king gets to E4 and somehow makes its way to F5. Right. But I think Nihal knows what he's doing here.
Yeah, the problem is if the king leaves, the F3 pawn falls, and that's why you see a rook F4. Okay, rook F4 would have iced it.
Right.
But this take on F3, now we have...
Yeah, and rook F7. With the G pawn, there's just no attempts. Normally, if there's a non-G pawn and you get, okay, but now even the Philidor
6th rank defense, yeah, exactly. So if G6 is played, then you bring your rook to A1. So
the thing is, with the pawn on the G file, you can even keep your rook on the 8th rank, which is something is a big no-no normally in the endgame.
Yes, but I think it's important for everyone to know that you often want to put your rook behind, but you want to wait, kind of counterintuitively. You want to wait until the pawn gets the 6th rank. I'll show that when this game concludes, just because I think it's a very important endgame lesson for people to see. So let me show that. All right, bring up the analysis board. And at the end here, before G6 is played, like let's say you play rook to B1, then White has his king H6 move. And you're right, Don. You always have the 8th rank defense. But I think just people like to give a check from behind. Definitely. But then the king enters this position with a checkmating threat. And so I force your king out from the opposition, and then I will be able to push my pawn and win. So king F8, check, king here, king G7. I push my pawn, I build the bridge, and I win the game.
Right.
And if you check back from here, then there's G6, and you need to know that you have this 8th rank defense. It comes in kind of obviously at this point because you have to stop checkmate, but you just want to wait until the pawn pushes and then get the rook behind. That's the essential lesson. Mm-hmm. So let's go to the live board because they're blitzing things out here. They both have about 5 minutes, and it's move 17. So they're deep in theoretical waters.
Right, and we saw in Alexey's previous match, Jeffrey struggled with this a little bit. He would get some promising positions, and he would falter in critical moments when he had a chance for an advantage. And now we see Alexey, I think, in some regards, and in large part due to Nihal's resilience and his ability to generate incredible defensive chances. That previous game really hurt Robert.
Yes, it did, because...
There
just were points where it felt like Sarana was making progress, and he was, right? He got to a position where he was up 2 pawns in a rook endgame, and yet couldn't win based on the position. That's something that's extremely frustrating, but I don't think Sarana, does he really get that tilted?
No, I think he's anybody who makes it this far in the JSCC possesses a incredible set of qualities, period. And one of them, I think, is inevitably the ability to stay level-headed in times of trouble. And it would be an interesting statistic to see how many times both of these players have been trailing in their JSCC matches, maybe something that we'll look up over the break. But both of them are incredibly level-headed and very hard to sort of psychologically unsettle.
Well, Don, if they have been trailing, it certainly wasn't in their semifinal matchups because they both won pretty one-sided affairs, even though the end score for Sarana versus Jeffrey was like 3, maybe. But it's because Jeffrey started winning a bunch of bullet games, and before that, Alexey was out in the lead. And speaking of out in the lead, this pawn on d6, that's a passer that you're going to struggle to fend off because the bishop on b3 is an attacking piece. The pawn on d6 is a nice weapon, and it's just pass pawn. That's hard to gang up.
Yeah, it is a pass pawn. And this is a very interesting type of position where Black's also got to watch out for the safety of his king, because in the effort to stop the pass pawn, I've seen many games where Black neglects to keep his king safe, and there's some sort of back rank idea. Now, I think objectively, this game should probably end in a, well, I don't know, queen b7, rook d7. I'm trying to think in that position, king h7.
And queen f8 is possible.
That's nasty. No, this is nasty.
Oh, and I can also say bishop a4. I've already protected my d6 pawn.
So right, and just push. Oh, yeah, you can, because the queen from b8 is protecting it.
That's just game over, actually.
And he does it.
Wait, so after queen b7, what do you even do?
Rook f8?
Ah, come on, man. Don't do that to me.
Come on, man.
Yeah,
I guess d7.
Oh. And I can also just take on a7 at the very worst.
He does rook d7.
It's happening. Here comes queen b8, bishop a4.
Exactly as you indicated.
This is over.
Does Black have anything? He goes queen f8.
So that was the first move. That was the first move I said, and I have to admit, like 94. When I said queen f8, that was my idea, right? Like going for f7 and protecting d6. But then I looked at the evaluation bar off to the side, and queen f8 doesn't look here. Just go back one move. It's plus 3.74. Okay, queen f8 is a move that looks good. It's not plus 3.74. Right?
94 is a great defensive resource by Sarana. Targeting White's king, queen takes f2 is a big threat. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Actually, you're losing the d6
overlooked this.
Yeah.
And now this thing's turn around completely, don't they?
Yeah, having that bar, though, man, that's just... Imagine if the player's at a bar, you said plus 3.7, he would immediately find bishop a4.
Right, exactly. It's one of those things. You know, you hear it, you're like, okay, there's a crushing blow. And then your brain primes you and guides you into finding it. Unbelievable. The move 94, I think what's hard to see is how suddenly Black poses threats against White's king. You know, you're dominating, you're threatening Black's king. All of a sudden, queen takes f2, huge threat. You got to attend to that, play rook f1. Sad necessity, I think.
Yeah, rook f1, but then you lose d6.
Do you have something like queen e8?
Oh, I like the look of that.
And king h1? I have no idea.
Wait, but that's really fascinating because the rook on e8 needs a defender.
Right.
So Daniel's idea is a queen f2, king h1. Like, you can give a check, but then when I go king h2, you still have this
there's
problem.
Perpetual. Queen f4, I think you can give the rook and go knight e2, but you're not going to get more than Perpetual out of that discovery. He does it.
Yeah. Wow, queen 8 is a huge move to find there. Because knight takes f2? What's happening there? Like, there's a discovery.
Rook d5, maybe?
Oh, that's a... The knight h3 double check.
You take the hits and you say, I'm going to go after that knight.
So Don is saying rook to d5, hitting the queen. Knight h3 is a double check. It's not often you allow a double check and still are the side that's happy. But queen g1, just one check. Thank you for your knight. And, well, good night.
Right. Let's see what you did there. But if you make one more of those puns, I might exit the tournament.
So queen f2.
Your laugh covered up my pun, actually. I said if you make one more of those puns, I might have to exit the tournament, Nihal. Rather than commentating, I made this pun last time, so I won't do it now. Anyways, let's get back to the game.
So why is this so okay for White? Because you've lost a pawn. Your king on h1 doesn't feel safe and sound. Is it just the claim that this d6 pawn is full compensation? Because I see the bar says zeros, and I look at the position, I'm like, I don't really see why this is full equality.
It's the kind of zeros, though, that could turn either way. White could either easily lose that pawn, or Black could allow it to move to d7. I could see this turning either way. I feel like it's dynamic equality. Queen c5 by Black, maybe?
And there might be a take bishop a4 again that you have to watch out for, because then I can push my pawn to d7. So queen c5, if I trade, but bishop a4, rook d8, d7. Like, if you ever capture on d7, you're walking into a pin. So I'll have a move like rook c1 to go after your pawns.
Mm-hmm.
So the Black king can end up running into e7. The White rook will probably take some pawns, and maybe that's just what is needed for White to survive.
And here's a6, sort of a level-headed move, just making some small improvements, and preparing b5 against bishop a4.
That's true. Although I'm starting to like this d6 pawn again. For a moment, I was worried about White's king, but White's king's not really in true
It's
danger.
safe now, but what exactly does white do here? I mean, it's the kind of position rook c1, bishop c2 seems a little bit artificial. That came to my mind, though.
Okay, actually, it's kind of
that actually doesn't look that bad. I mean, because it also threatens some rook c7 concepts. Goes
Yeah,
a4.
also...
The one thing that concerns me, well, there's a couple of things. One is the b3 bishop is undefended now. Might seem insignificant, but that's something to keep an eye on. Oh,
Yeah.
queen c5, maybe you take and go a5 and fix that pawn on a light square.
I like that for sure. The pawn a6 is not very happy to be there. But there's knight e8 or something
But bishop
like that.
c4. I don't know. Yeah, then rook takes d6. You take twice and go c4,
no.
and then knight.
My man, after knight e4, I'm throwing knight f2 check. So you have to be very careful.
Oh, come on. You faked me out.
You thought I was going for the d6 pawn, but no. I was saying, hey, play bishop c4. Please do that. I'm not going to take you
because I was seeing a knight on e8. I thought you went knight e8.
Oh, okay, got it. So knight e8, bishop c4.
You're not allowed to play knight e4. That's too aggressive.
Sorry, my friend. Even though this probably still is going to be a good position for black, like some kind of c4.
Indeed, and Sarana taking his time now, as he should. He can go a5 and fix the pawns. That would not be a good move, yielding the b5 square. Then bishop c4.
Yeah, a5, bishop c4. Get that bishop to b5. That's kind of an outpost for that piece. Too good to be true.
Yeah, so big decision here to be made. It's a very sort of amorphous position, Robert. It's hard to make heads or tails of exactly what you do here.
And this queen on f2 sort of needs to stay here because queen f5 check will also be annoying, right? Like if your queen is gone, I get this check, you can't play g6 because your knight would be under attack.
Right.
So just feels tougher for black to play. Even if black is better, like let's say that's the objective evaluation, I just don't see an easy move.
Yeah, it's not Zugzwang, but I say that, with a smile on my face. But okay, queen h4 now, that is a very bold move. Queen f5 check can be met with g6. But something about this move seems a little bit concerning, but Nihal has only 27 seconds to figure out what that is. Maybe bishop c2 check.
Bishop c2, there's still g6, and the king doesn't want to go to g7, that's for sure.
Ooh, but where does the queen go?
g5?
Yeah, it has to, but then wait a second. Bishop c2 check.
Yeah, I don't really want to trade queens. Queen f2, your idea.
Then rook f4 maybe. Now bishop c2 g6, I guess. He takes... Okay, so this
bishop f7 is possible, and so is bishop a6. So,
yep, but bishop a6, I feel like black is squarely playing for a win.
Agreed.
He goes for this, and there's no mate along h4 because of the pawn on g5.
Yep.
So rook takes d6. Is black pressing here?
Probably slightly better. Has to be, right? But the point is rook d6, you can't take on e8 because your rook's under attack. So that rook g4, nice move to win a pawn at least.
Indeed. Knight d6 though, counter attacking the bishop. Now bishop b3. Oh, bishop b3. You cannot attack the bishop because of bishop c2.
Good point.
Look at this. You've got to play rook d2.
And rook g5, and you've restored material equality.
I would press, of course, if you're black, because with 4 seconds, where there is a knight, there is trouble, as we know.
And rook e5, there's knight c5. Trying to go knight d3, knight f4 type of ideas.
Bishop c4 links the bishop to the a6 pawn. Now the pawn might be lost.
Yeah, the a4 pawn.
He's got to move. He takes
it.
Okay.
Rook e6 check. He's trying to take on b6. Play down a piece.
I don't know. That's a very interesting idea.
I think it's lost. It has to be.
Yeah, especially with no time on the clock. He goes a5 instead, which...
Oh, please take me on a5 because of rook e6 check.
Oh.
Just a little tricky.
So tricky.
Yeah.
He knew he was going to lose that pawn anyway.
And this has to be a win for black, right?
It does, but I actually once drew a similar position over the board against Bu Shenji, Chinese grandmaster, and I had a bishop, but it was one of those like 2 pawns against 1 situation. You think it has to be winning, but with a knight, the knight can chisel its way into white's position here with, well, maybe you can even take here, I think.
Yeah, there could be just a rook swap, and then you bring the king in, but he's doing it this way. There could be a mating net.
He wants to be sure.
Like, could there be like some kind of king h4, knight g3 type of mating net as well? Seems too much to ask for.
Yeah. Also, you're going to have to watch for stalemate ideas. If you put a king on h4, knight on g3, that is in effect stalemates white's pawns.
True.
Okay, so he's using his knight as a cover. The one thing you have to watch out for if you're black is obviously not to lose that g pawn.
Oh, he trades.
Now what happens here? This has got to be losing king f5.
So king f5, king h4, there's king f4.
F4.
Yeah, you want to.
Yeah, and then G4, G5, and knight e4.
You really want white to push the pawns because the
I would go
G2.
G5.
You would or would not?
I would.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted you.
No. I'm just gonna say that you. Okay, this is what you want for. So now, as soon as you push the pawns, they become weaker. The pawn G2 is very hard to get to. The pawn in G4 is extremely easy to get to. Look, the king's already boxed out. G5.
And G5, it's over. I mean, that
King
knight easily
E3.
limits the pawn, and it's Zugzwang, and it's over. And that's a big game for Alexey with the black pieces as they enter the last game of the 5-minute segment.
Wow, we've already been here for almost an hour and a half.
That's crazy. I feel like it's game one. These games have been so saturated, so full of life and complexity.
I actually really cannot believe that. Like, I know the score is 4-3. I see that in front of me, but I feel like we're still on like the third game.
Yeah, no, I feel like I was going to say exactly the same thing.
I feel enthused and energetic. And so we have this position. We've seen it before. These are the questions that we tend to ask each other. Who will blink first? Who's going to change their opening and the quicker time controls? But
yes.
Sarana likes this position. He hasn't played G4 yet. So that's a big difference between this game and some of the others. And because I guess he hadn't played G4, in comes E5 as the queen defends the E5 square.
Right. And he's opening up the center. And I like that he's doing it much faster this game. We saw him get in trouble once the position gets cramped. The opportunity doesn't come around again. And Sarana taking the first think, which is always a good sign for his opponents because he's really known as an opening specialist. We've discussed that. Whoa, wait a minute.
The bar just went crazy.
43.
That's what I was looking at. Just push that thing.
Oh.
This knight is in trouble, too.
This is nasty. No, this is terror. Wait, knight takes c3, queen a5, and g5?
Oh, my gosh. The knight traps? Is that your claim?
Oh, my lands.
So wait, so queen f6
knight
is
takes c3 might win the game, though.
Look at this.
Queen a5.
I'm going to show that real quick. Knight c3. If you take on f5, I take on d1. I'm up a piece because my bishop attacks your knight. So bc, queen a5, and g5 next move traps the knight.
Was I overexcited about this, or did I actually almost win the game?
No, you're totally right. The knight is trapped out there.
Yep. And what he's done is also very advantageous, takes f2, but at least this gives Sarana some life.
But I assure you, Danya, that Alexey will not be repeating this exact variation.
Why would you think so, Robert? Well, don't make me jump to conclusions. I mean, this is a very good line. Come on.
I love how you're trying to say that with such a straight face. This is something that you have that one-time mistake, and you absolutely never do it again.
Right. Okay. Cross that off the list.
Exactly. And I just want to see. It looked interesting. I mean, the E3 square, there's a knight that is replacing the pawn.
This is still so nasty. And it's easy for me to criticize and say, I should have seen this and this. But my coach would always talk about this, what he would call the narrowing bridge, where when you're winning, it's like when you enter the bridge, it's very, very wide. And then the further along you go, it becomes narrower and narrower. So you want to be very careful about being a little bit too cavalier in terms of pressing on the gas pedal here. You want to win the game swiftly, and you want to pounce while the iron is still hot, if that makes sense.
I'm with you, because if you do let this king castle by hand, or then all of a sudden you're like, wait, where'd my advantage go? And you also pollute your own mind by thinking, I was much better, if not winning. I should still be that, where that may not be the case. Rook e3 is certainly a good move. You are just shutting down White's plans. You just bring the next rook in.
So we're not trying to castle by hand, rook f1, king g1. The problem with rook f1 is that queen g6 here is possible as a prophylactic move against king g1, and then g4 weakens the f4 square.
There's also queen h6, hitting h3, threatening knight c3, rook f3.
Oh, no,
something like that.
Yep, I think that's a brilliant move, actually.
So like queen h6, h4, I'm just shows knight c3, pawn takes, rook f3 check. And now there would be a back rank checkmate, but after ef3, queen d2 is check to your miserable king.
And this is definitely a critical moment where Nihal is, I think, deciding between these two moves. Also, queen d6 is possible. Again, coming at it from the other angle, but I really like your move, queen h6. I think does it end the game immediately? It very well might.
It could, but it just, I don't know. Queen h6, I feel like your moves, though, are more natural. Queen g6 in particular just feels so simplistic.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Right, exactly. And no, you want to be sort of simple and straightforward, and people think that's bad, and every idea has to be super complex. It doesn't. If you play simply, sometimes that means your idea is healthier.
Yeah, I like queen g6 actually, because the knight can't move from f3. The g3 pawn is hanging thanks to the rook on e3. It feels like white can't really even move. So queen g6 is just one step of many in the right direction.
Yeah. The one thing is, well, you want to play quickly, right? 2 minutes. 2 minutes on the clock, and again, a 2-minute advantage now for Alexey. I know that might be insignificant in a winning position, but I'm looking at queen d6, knight e5. There's a lot of this stuff that you're going to have to process, and you need time to do that, Robert.
Yes, so for still always crazy amount of time for Alexey, but not a great position. And I'm just looking here for a second. So, we see that. I mean, what's Nihal thinking about exactly? Because he plays take on c3 first and queen e7.
Now, that is something we didn't factor in. A very positional approach. He's going after that a pawn and simultaneously keeping an eye on the e2 pawn. Queen
True.
b2, knight a5, knight c4. I mean, we've seen his ideas can look a little bit, they can look like they don't carry a punch, but they almost always do. So I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here. But queen b2, knight e5, knight a5, knight e5. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to highlight is that he could have taken that bishop on c3 at any point. So taking it immediately, unless you have a very concrete plan, in which case he does, to take on a3 next, it almost wouldn't be worth it. But queen b2, down his point, the knight can come to a5, trying to get to the c4 square, but then you free up the e5 square for white's knight, and that's when things get complicated, and that's when things start to turn around, especially when white is well ahead in the clock.
The funny thing is, if you could capture your own pieces after queen b2, queen takes e3 would be checkmate.
That's actually really funny. Queen takes rook, mate. So knight h4 played. Queen g5. There's knight takes f5. So
what about bishop takes h3 and then queen g5 and rook? Okay, that's too much.
I mean, actually, I like that.
Was that too much? Knight f5, rook f3?
No, queen g5. Knight f5. There was rook f3 anyway. So actually,
I don't know.
These kind of moves just might have been good. Knight f5, rook f3 check.
You have to take the plunge at some point. Sometimes you're not going to win the game just by, maneuvering alone. But I feel like this is still so good for him.
Yeah, you can't complain about this. But queen g5, it's going to be a winning move.
No, this is, the more I look at this, the more I realize he actually hasn't relinquished any of his advantage.
Oh, bishop takes c6.
Knight f5.
Excuse me? Yo, no knight f5 for you.
Wow. Okay, but knight g2 kicks the rook away.
Yeah, rook, where to go?
Wait a second. Rook e4, I guess, and he keeps the attack on a3 and h3.
Yeah, attack everywhere. And you just have full control over all the squares.
Censor.
You can even play g5 at some point. I wouldn't do that right now. Well, actually, I would have considered g5 there.
Takes, but I like the fact that he's establishing a pass pawn. He can drop the queen to d6 and then go for c5 also, as well as obvious. And the good thing about c5 is it brings the a pawn under the bishop's protection.
Very, very true. It becomes a protected pass pawn from a long-range piece. So h6, he's trying to look at g5, also giving his king an escape from the back rank. Not that that was needed just yet, but always good to have.
Always needed.
Oh, gosh. g5. Tempting with knight h5.
Crunch.
Right?
He's going to go c5 and just smash through the center. You mentioned double pawns being often underestimated, Robert. This is another instance of that where he can play c6 and the other pawn again undermines the pawn on d5. No rush for that, though. He goes a3, drives that pawn through. This is completely winning for him. Completely winning. He's going to have to make a couple more accurate moves, though.
Yeah, and just like the bishop came alive to defend the a pawn, c5 to c4 will open up the queen to defense and then make this pawn on d5 even weaker, right? White needs to somehow protect that pawn with another pawn. That's not happening.
Okay. Now e3 falls, and then I think g5 is going to come at the right moment, but he's got to watch for knight h5 if he does play g5.
I think it still works to have rook e2 in the end of those variations, but
yes,
just he goes rook a4, gets his rook behind his pass pawn. That is good endgame technique. In this position, not sure if it was best, but how can you fault that move anyway?
No, you can't, and all roads lead to Rome here. But you want to be careful about overusing that expression in chess. Sometimes you get too comfortable, and again, we talked about this. All of a sudden, the win gets a little bit more difficult. But he is banking on his a pawn, which I think is possible. So not doing what he can though to activate his pieces, seek counterplay against Black's king.
He wants to go e4, e5. If you get e3 to e5 in one move, he would have some serious chances just to open up the king, but too slow.
Yep, and he goes king h2, trying to tuck his king away preemptively. The 20 seconds is what concerns me a little bit for Nihal, because if he gives white any hope, wait, 96?
96? Queen, rook e7 maybe? Just like
I would have tried that just because of the time situation. Now he drops his queen back, and that just seems like an admission of, nothing's going well for me here.
And for Nihal, it's an admission, hey, I probably should have played a little bit differently in the last couple moves. My advantage is still huge. The bishop on c4 protects a2. That's the essential pawn there. The rook on a1 is stuck being passive and just defending the square. And thus, how do you defend e3? Rook f3? Yeah, not a
queen
good
e5, rook b8. I mean, bishop takes d5. You can even play. There's just so many moves here. Queen e1, yeah. So
here's queen e5 going right after the e3 pawn.
Sliding in with queen e4, rook b8, rook b1 is a plan as well.
No fun. No fun. He protected
no fun. Square. Queen e3.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm taking that. G5 also possible.
I was looking at G5, rook to B8. You keep mentioning that move. Too many options.
I mean, there's no hurry. He's just enjoying himself here, and you can play entirely at your leisure. White has no counterplay. Rook A3 is going after another pawn.
And if rook F3, then G5 forces the trade of queens, and just easily winning position. So rook F3, there's G5 kicking the knight, and a queen E2 check to force the queens off.
Yep. Queen E4, same idea. But queen F2, I guess he wants queen B1. Yeah, why not?
You can play.
He's thinking about it. He's going to play.
Oh my gosh, he's just such a
That's clinical. That is very clinical.
She can't move.
And if the queen comes to G1, you take it, and then you finally go rook B8, rook B1, or G5, or one of a million moves. What a game here and this opening. Uncharacteristically, Robert Sarana doesn't usually get in such trouble with the white pieces out of the opening.
Allowing e4, e3. Oh. You spotted the tactic that may have won with rook e2, would have won the queen directly, but this is also good.
Well, look at this. This is just tied to hand and foot. Last breaths here, rook takes d5, but this is cosmetic.
Even queen, you can allow queen f7.
You can allow it, but he doesn't.
Yeah, very, very smart not to allow it.
Yeah, he just shuts this down entirely, and it's over.
It is indeed. And that means that Nihal Sarin, he takes a 5-3 lead heading into the quicker time controlling. What a mistake by Sarana in this last game. I mean, the opening was really just so questionable.
Yes.
This we've seen before. And his first, I guess, error, if you will, was not throwing in this G4 move. Because when you get this position, if the queen's on G6, you don't have E5. You've been calling for that E5, clamoring for it time after time.
Yeah.
And then just allow this pawn to E3. Destruction immediately.
He responded in a big way, and that's definitely a rough end for Sarana, but he's got to put things in perspective. It's a 2-point game. This has been an incredibly high-level final. We've gotten everything we've asked for, and then some, and I'm sure we will again in the 3-minute portion. But first, coffee.
Well, I'll let you grab your coffee. We'll all take a little breather. And when we return, we will have the 3-minute plus 1-second increment portion of this Junior Speed Chess Championship final, brought to you by Chess.com and ChessKid.com. And we return to the Junior Speed Chess Championship final between Nihal Sarin and Alexey Sarana. And it was predicted that Nihal Sarin would make his way to the final and be the player that makes his way to the Speed Chess Championship, because that's what's at stake in addition to the prize money. As we see, the predictions brought to us by Chess Goals. Danya Nihal Sarin was expected to beat Sam Sevian, but Sarana knocked Sevian out earlier. Do you think that's going to hold up? Is Nihal Sarin going to be our champion?
Well, based on the way that the 5-minute portion has gone, I think there's every reason to believe that. He's played incredibly, but obviously we've seen the kind of displays that Sarana has put on. He's not in bad form today, so things could turn around in an instant, in a single move. I think this is going to be really close, and it's been an amazing match. But before we have liftoff, just a couple more things here.
Yeah, the Chess Goals, Chess Smart, just bringing us these predictions. It's an innovative 12-week data-driven premium study plan to help you stay focused and reach your goals. You can use the coupon JSCC to save 25% on your purchase. So you use the command goals in the chat. Enjoy it. It's a great product. But alas, we are about to have liftoff in this JSCC matchup. Nihal Sarin goes into the 3-minute portion, up a couple points in the match. But Alexey Sarana, if anybody is capable of mounting a comeback, I believe he is certainly able to do so.
Absolutely, he is. And we've seen that his time management has been more than savvy. And in the 3-minute portion, Nihal is going to have to modify his strategy a little bit. I mean, he's a blitz beast. Obviously, he knows that. He doesn't need me telling him. But some of those critical moments, Robert, he's going to have to speed up his decision-making slightly.
He will. And we have a different style of position. It is Catalan-like in nature because of the bishop on g2 staring down towards the queen side. So that bishop is just, generally speaking, the best piece on the board. But black is captured on c4 down there. White plays queen to c2. I know some lines include b5, trying to keep this pawn. Others say, hey, take that pawn back. Nothing I can do about it. I'm going to be extra solid.
And that's the latter approach by Sarana. He's giving the pawn up. But no, this is definitely, he hasn't equalized. There's no way this is equal. This is a Catalan dream. In fact, I think this is quite bad for him. Normally, if you give up a pawn like that, you want to get b6, bishop b7 already in. He takes the approach, a very solid approach, and maybe he wants to play e5 in some of these positions. Yep, he does play e5.
Yeah, the problem that I think you and I are kind of hinting at is that the bishop on c8, it's typically not a great piece, but that's why you play e5, is to open up that diagonal. And there is a pawn majority for white from the D through H files. Maybe it will transition to the E through the H files. And black has a pawn majority from the A through the C files, a 3-on-2. But black's pawns are stuck in place. They are not able to push through because white is so well developed here. And that should leave white with a small plus. But Nihal down almost 20 seconds already.
Yep, he is. And now he's deciding what to take with. I would take with a knight. Yeah, definitely don't want that isolated pawn. I like what Alexey has done here in the last couple of moves. At first, I was beginning to think, Robert, his position was really dubious, but now he's gone e5. I still think he's slightly worse, and I think Nihal is very good at squeezing an advantage out of these positions. But by and large, I think there's no global problems with his position. And speaking of problems, my coffee is 5 feet away. I have to get up and get it. So I'm going to give you the wheel for 3 seconds here.
All right, well, that sounds like an issue for sure. And they saw a trade of knights in e5. The queen comes there, but look at this queen hitting b7. So black, in terms of the quality of his pieces, doing perfectly fine. In fact, the bishop is now developed. It was stuck behind the wall of pawns when it was on c8. Now it's outside any kind of pawn chain, out in the open. Knight on 6, queen on e5, rook on d7, everything nice and solid here. So Danya, I see that you're back. I'm only just starting to talk to you, my friend. But, oh no, g4, f4, f5. I was about to say that black did a great job of getting out of any danger, but you walked into a loss of a piece.
What did I do? It was me getting up and getting the coffee. That's what made him blunder. Now, does he take on g4? Is that the lesser evil? But that, Robert, that's not nearly enough, is it?
No, it most certainly is not. This bishop.
And that's even more precise, I think, at 4 first in order to eliminate those possibilities.
Yeah, that's true, because if you played g4 earlier and the bishop was already here, the queen could come to h5, but now the queen does not get to stay and try to be a menacing piece on the king side. Here comes g4. Thank you so much for your bishop.
Bishop.
g4, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight g4. I could see how that could scare Nihal off if he's worried about
Boy.
E3 and a mating attack.
Maybe knight f5 here should be preferred. He's got a minute here, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but again, this becomes a little bit more significant in the 3-minute portion when you have less time to begin with. So one very precise move required here. I'm thinking rook f3 is also possible. Queen h4, and then, well, you could do nothing. You could allow queen h2. That could seem unthinkable, but it's not always as dangerous as it seems. Not sure though. What is the most accurate way here?
Yeah, because knight f3 would drop the e3 pawn. You don't want to lose a third one. He plays your move knight f5. Queen f6, I guess his e4. He plays that.
But I was afraid of g6.
Yeah, because I was trying to go queen g3 if I had enough time, but your g6 move says not so fast.
Okay, knight e3 simply. He wants to trade the knights.
Oh, but a queen d4, this rook d1. Giving up the knight
to
win the rook.
And he gives the... Oh, wait, e5 here in Intermezzo, maybe.
Because you don't want to give up b2 is what you're trying to...
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sold on the fact that giving up b2 is such a bad thing. I mean, you could give it up and go rook f2.
Sure, but that is a third pawn. And
it is, yeah.
Okay, gives up b2, and I see the bar start sinking there. So probably e5 was
e5 would have been better. And now he goes f5. See, that's something like what I was thinking. He goes directly for the attack.
Sorry,
but Sarana trades queens.
I was going to say, what attack? The queens are gone.
Yeah. And, well, Nihal could put the pawn on f6. That's one of the ideas that gives him those long... He still has something resembling an attack. And now you can't take the pawn because of bishop h3.
Oh, nice.
That's a nasty idea.
Nihal found that very quickly.
He did.
The rooks would be in a line in the light square, so that would be bishop h3. And actually, this is so essential to White's winning chances, is creating a clear pass on...
And
rook f7.
Taking a page out of your book, the pawn on a2 is the same color as the bishop.
Yes, for sure. And
so he has determined that endgame after the trade of both rooks on the 7th is going to be winning for him, which I think it is.
Yes. So, and if rook e6, that would not be very good because rook 1 takes b7, and thank you for a massive attack.
Oh. That is nasty.
So what can you... I mean, so I think you have to take.
What do you do? Yeah, I think you have to take and go king f6 because the bishop against pawn's endgame is... The king is going to limit easily the connected passers. Black's going to end up in Zugzwang. He's going to have to give up both pawns. I don't see that happening for Black. He goes for it. We'll see.
Losing, right?
I feel like it is, but maybe there's something we're not taking into account.
Well, okay, so in order to win, obviously the white king needs to go after this a pawn. So somehow, Black's king can't do anything. White can go a4, leave a bishop on e8 or wherever.
Yeah.
Wait a sec, though. Is there a way for me to get over here?
Oh,
and then just you can't take my pawn.
And the pawns are linked.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, it's an amazing defensive idea by Sarana.
Because
amazing.
King a3, bishop d5. The problem you can't take this pawn because Black just pushes this one all the way through.
That's amazing. I mean, and we've seen these ideas before many times. It's like the pawns are chained together. The moment the king takes, the bishop becomes overloaded with the task of defending a2 and stopping h4. It's a draw.
Yeah, all you need to do now is king b2, pawn a3, and then just go king a1, king b1, b2, whatever, back and forth. Yeah. And as we keep talking about, you take on g6, you'll see exactly this play out. You give
Pawn's going to go all the way to h1. All the way to h1.
And there's the draw. Wow.
And that is, wow. That's a very, very strong defensive effort by Sarana. That move, rook f7. It was played quickly, a very understandable choice by Nihal. It seemed losing, but because of this very specific idea, and Robert, here we have another one of these lines.
We have it once more. We'll see if Alexey has learned his lesson during the break, checked his prep. He does include g4. Now there's none of this e5 stuff, very important distinction. And I do see some people saying, oh, Nihal doesn't need to, we don't need to worry about Nihal's time. He doesn't need to worry about it because he'll just win within 2 seconds. I actually think that the last game, even though he didn't, he of course didn't lose it, but he probably should have been given more winning chances than he did. By playing rook f7, he didn't have enough time to really calculate all the consequences, and we obviously didn't know that it was a draw so easily. Sarana says, "Yeah, actually, I got this under control." But
I looked at this when I was 14 in the training camp, led by Gary Kasparov and Vladimir Kramnik.
I just think that Nihal does need to leave himself a little bit more time so he can convert positions like that, especially because Sarana is never going to go down without a huge fight.
Right, he never is, and on neither of these players is. Now, we've seen this before. This is the position where I propose d5. Black is worse here. I mean, I'm not sure what it is Nihal sees in this position. Maybe, I mean, f6 prepares e5, I suppose.
What was it that he did last time? Like his bishop somehow came around to g6, but that's because Sarana went queen c2 very early in that game, which is probably premature.
Yeah, and here he goes rook c1. He turns the dial up. Exchange sack incoming? Nah, probably too early. Sarana.
I'm interested in it. I don't think it works. There's always knight f4 for black.
Yeah.
I'm definitely intrigued.
Okay, so as is, I'm sure, Sarana. But queen c2 here is also possible, something like that. But that gives up a pawn. So somehow Nihal, concretely, because of that f4 square, it seems like he's got pretty good chances here. I stand corrected.
Yeah, something's not going right for Sarana in this opening. I think he should change it.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think he should castle here. I think he should just move his king out of the center. Ooh, knight h4, okay. So queen f7.
Yeah, queen f7.
And then Nihal's also probably considering queen e8, but I'm not sure what benefits that contains. He goes queen f7.
Although the bar did not like queen f7.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I see the difference. Okay. So with the queen on f7, white can play e4 and d5 very quickly as just one option. With the queen on e8, you don't get e4 in because I could take on d4, and then your pawn on e4 is pinned.
Okay. But what about knight f4 here? Okay, knight takes e5. I like knight f4. I feel like while white is still uncastled, you can try to generate these chances. Sarana still doesn't castle. But now something tells me he's stabilized the boat a little bit.
The bishop pair. It's all about the bishop pair. This is good for white.
Yeah.
100%. So
he's trying something, knight to d4 to b3.
True. That would be a big pain. So you can play e3. That does soften up some of your light squares, but e3, it takes away the d4 square from that knight. What else can be played here?
Just worried about Alexey's internet here.
Oh, wow. He's at one bar.
But, you know, okay, I was going to link that to the eval
bar.
E4.
But...
Whoa. Whoa. Are we sure about this?
I most definitely am not sure about this. He plays knight b6 quickly.
Now look at that d4 square. Crunch.
I'm shocked that he played that.
I am too. That is somewhere, I mean, who are the positional? Capablanca, Nimzovich, Vladimir Kramnik. They're not very happy at this move. But I'm going to give Alexey the benefit of the doubt here. He's, he's a lot better at making these judgments than I am. So we'll see what he does here. Queen c3, rook ft1. Maybe he's banking on sort of the immediate activity of his pieces.
Perhaps. And I guess there's a knight f5 jump that could be a little frustrating at some point, but something about this seems like it did not go the way he wanted it to. You could take on e3 at any moment to get rid of the bishop pair, but perhaps black doesn't actually have as much as I thought, just based on initial instinct. Like knight c4, it's such a good piece, but what next?
Right. And our production team, our wonderful production team, reminds us that Alexey is the trooper that he is playing the match from a hotel room. Because he's playing currently the Russian Higher League, which is an incredibly strong over-the-board event, actually. So he's making time for this. Final kudos to him, but that could be impacting his connection a little bit.
Yeah, so, the background is very different, but...
Yeah, where's that wooden sauna wall?
Yeah, I know. I was wondering the same thing. The steam room, he's, now it's all over the board. None of that in the background, but he still looks focused. He's still, of course, playing his heart out, and he just pushed his pawn to f4. So speaking of weakening moves, it looks aggressive, but it could also leave your king on g1 extremely vulnerable.
He's demanding a lot from his pieces here. He's stretching his resources thin, but that could pay off. Bishop b3. Nihal sticks his bishop on another outpost. Look at that knight on d4, the bishop on b3. He can also go b6, c5 and support the knight. I mean, all of my positional instincts are telling me that black is in fantastic shape here.
I would certainly concur with that. Bishop d3 doesn't stop b6, c5. You just pointed that idea out. And what is white's idea? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, I mean, he's created so many weaknesses now. Nihal with 30 seconds. Your b6 indeed played. I like this idea. Maybe you go e5. Yep.
So you're hoping to get an attack on this
At
H7
this point,
pawn?
you've done so much, you might as well go the full 9 yards. At BFE, knight f5 ideas.
Well, there's also a queen e4 hitting H7 and threatening queen
Ooh,
a8. So you actually have to
good
be quite
catch.
careful.
And again, the time. C5 by Nihal. He ignores it. Queen e4.
e4.
What does Nihal want to do there? G6, but then your check on a8. That looks scary.
There are also f5 ideas after g6. Like, let me just try to crash through.
Rook e7.
No fear.
G5 maybe?
G5, is there f5? Is like to close things down?
That shuts things down. I agree.
Okay, so sometimes you can get away with things like that, but not here. So knight f3.
Knight f3.
The tension is so just
real.
It
is. The position might look sort of tame. It might look balanced, but it's laden with tension. Filled to the brim in 8 seconds. Here we go.
Okay, so he does play g6, but now I don't like that because it doesn't really make king
the
safer.
position, and Sarana's gotten rid of that pesky knight on d4. That lightens his load by quite a bit.
Take
f5.
F5 is just too.
That's
I thought you could take on e5 like queen h6 though. That also was available.
That also did look good. Queen c4. Nihal going after white's king. Sarana's going to
take
go
on
after
g6.
Black's king.
Take on g6
Yeah,
and
he's
then
just
play
got to
queen
take
h6.
twice. But queen d4 check.
Oh gosh.
Oh, he takes the bishop. Oh, he attacks the rook.
Wow.
Blundered.
Wow, look at Sarana. He's just shaking his head.
Queen h6 would have been much stronger, your move, because that would have threatened checkmate.
Yeah, it would. f8 and g6. We'll bring up the analysis board real quick here, but look at the players.
Queen c4 by Nihal. Wow.
You can't believe it. You can't believe it.
You can't.
At this moment, he could take on g6 right away, but queen h6, it threatens a rook f8 mate. It threatens the pawn on g6. And maybe Nihal will survive this. I don't see the way to. It looks just very dangerous.
Yeah, it does. That threat of queen f8 just put his queen on the wrong square. Nihal immediately seizing the opportunity. We have another look at this. I am going to stay very... Remember that game in Sarana versus John where they had crazy theory for like 20 moves? This is another one of those Vienna games. Okay. I have no clue what's going on here. Help me out, Robert.
I'm just going to go through the moves so we can show everybody.
Please.
So one of these lines where bishop back to d2, and now Sarana takes an e4. Queen g4 hits the knight, hits g7. Says, here, take my 2 pieces for your rook, but your king is in the center. So we get to the live board here. Oh my goodness. How do we evaluate this? So let's do a quick material count. 2 minor pieces and... No, not and a pawn. Just 2 minor pieces for rook. That's clean. So that's the exact material imbalance. The king is on e7. Not thrilled to be there. You have to keep your queen in line with the f5 square.
And g4 an idea in that regard.
G4 following knight f5 could be something. And you play queen to g7. So why would you remove your queen from h8? Was there some kind of threat? Oh, g4. Wait, is g4 now?
Queen g6, knight f5, king e8, queen
d4. Yeah.
Oh. Is g4 devastating? That looks like it's devastating. What does Black even do? That could just be checkmate.
Looks very tempting.
It does, and I'm sure Nihal is calculating it. The question, did Sarana miss it, or is he seeing something there that we're missing?
There's probably something deeper there.
There probably is.
He's moving very quickly, so he's...
Or it's a bluff, and Nihal calls it. I think we're about to see. Let's take a look at his face. Yeah, he kind of raised his eyebrows there. I think he missed it.
Okay, but he played his response.
But he plays, yeah, maybe not.
So queen d4 was played, but the bar dropped. So there must have been something that was even better. Maybe rook d4, weirdly enough. Like that way you hit the knight where the queen stays defended. You can double your rooks in the d file. And
I guess the point that Alexey is making is, hey, you know what? Give me that check on g7. Come after me. I've got everything defended. He's got the d7 bishop defended. He's got the c4 knight defended. It seems that Nihal doesn't really have any entry points. He does probably have perpetual, though Sarana could run his king to d8 even here. I guess he can take on h5 simply. And then knight f4, knight d5 becomes an idea. Practically speaking, this is so hard to play in a blitz game, Robert.
Yeah, it certainly is. And if Black can stabilize, it's a very big if. Bishop c6 will happen, and then it's White's king that can get in trouble. But that's a very far ways away.
Heads are going to roll here. And whose head is going to roll?
So queen g5. I'm tempted to play f4, but then queen c5 trading the queen. So I do not want to trade queens.
I'm tempted to play knight f4.
Just to go
and then knight d5. I know that's a very sort of telegraphed thing, like Jimmy Garoppolo's football pass that he winds up for 10 minutes and then throws an interception. But Knight g3, so similar kind of concept. He's coming to f5, but there's very little that black can do. Maybe queen c5, your move, Robert. Knight f5, king d8. How do you exactly chase that king down, which is escaping to c7?
That king's really just going on a journey there. There's queen f6 check ideas, which may drop f7. So like queens, if your queen goes too far away. What a brave guy.
Oh,
f6.
Oh.
a7.
Now, you could even take on a7.
Exactly.
I know that, I know, but why not?
You could take that.
Onishuk, remember Alexander Onishuk?
I certainly do.
Free pawns.
Queen takes a7. There is bishop c6, so you actually have to be careful.
You do.
You're not
Rook
walking
d4,
into
knight e5, etc.
I'm with you. I'm with you that queen a7 looks like a hanging pawn. You have to be certain before you take that one because it does give
one that I'm not certain, Robert.
It just gives black that very needed tempo to bring a bishop on the strong diagonal.
I don't like what you're indicating about what I am and am not certain about. I don't know if I want to commentate with you again.
Thankfully, this is the finality
exactly.
of the Junior Speeches Championship. So what can white do? He's spending a lot of time. He's done a minute.
He's vacillating over there. That's exactly what he's thinking about. Knight f5 is tempting as well, but king f7, that's the point of f6 is actually a brilliant move. h4 also came to mind, but that actually just sends the queen to a. Here he goes.
But he spent too long taking that pawn.
He did.
Way too long.
I agree. Bishop c6, maybe come back to d4.
And then knight e5.
Oh my goodness, knight f3. I keep forgetting about that.
It just feels like you're inviting me in.
Blah.
It's a warm welcome to dinner. Thank you so much, Danya.
You're welcome, Robert. You're always welcome.
But
I'm really good at ordering pizza. I'm just going to tell you.
On a serious note, like these light squares are really an issue, and we were talking about this a while ago. Now it's 2 pawns and a rook for the 2 minor pieces.
The time.
It's less about the material and more so about the weak squares.
How does he stop knight e5? That's an incredibly devastating idea. But knight e4, trying to get rid of the bishop.
I would not take that knight, that's for sure. I'd play queen b5 maybe, just throw my queen that way.
And then queen d4 maybe, but again knight e5. Jeez. This
one
idea keeps recurring.
And then actually, if you're not careful, this knight from f8 can go to g6 and then to e5 or h4, right? This g4 pawn would like to go back to g3 or even g2 to help the white king.
Maybe queen b5 he wants a4. And queen takes a4, queen c5, and queen takes c4.
I see you with your tactics. They are nice and sharp.
That was a nice tactic, though.
Yeah, that would be great. I do think that.
Watch this happen.
Wow, that would actually. Here, if a4, here it is. So queen
Watch
a5.
This happen.
Or queen b6. Queen b6 is probably the best. Just trade the queens
knight
off.
d6. Queen b6, knight d6.
You are just...
Knight d6 now.
Oh my gosh. If takes, knight c8 check.
But queen d4, that also looks good. I guess
you could have moved the rook away after knight d6, but wow. I like queen b6.
Sorry, I got excited there. Because then knight f5 check.
Wait, wasn't the knight just hanging on c4?
Yeah, wasn't... What are we missing there, Robert?
I don't know.
Literally a hanging knight.
but here he's going to take d6, take e6. And
Nihal, again, look at the clock that he's managing, and he's impervious to it.
And that's a mate on e8. Is there
no way to stop that? Lands. There is no way to
queen takes e1 or queen e5 the only way. Wow.
Unbelievable. And look at how quickly he turned this around. This idea of a4, Robert, to find it with almost no time on the clock is incredible.
You found it. He found it.
Nah.
You both are.
I'm
doing
sitting
great.
in my comfortable.
Wait, there was rook a1. That was rook a1. I was like, what is rook takes e5? Oh my gosh, we have to show that.
Oh my lands.
Oh my gosh, there was just.
Oh my.
I'm sorry,
God.
but here there's rook a1 and rook h1 mate. You couldn't stop it.
That's unbelievable.
You missed checkmate.
You did.
Oh, that's so unfortunate for him.
It is. That was a huge chance to turn things around.
And we're going to get to live position.
Automatic response. Oh my goodness, Robert.
He still has like an outside chance to hold this game, but
he does, but
really.
The pawns are too strong. Queen c3. 2 seconds, anything can happen, but the queen's going to fork the rook on e5.
Yeah. Queen e5 check, that's it. Wow, he missed checkmate.
Oh
gosh.
My goodness. And does he... I mean, I don't know if he realizes it. It's probably not the sort of thing you realize in retrospect.
Oh my god! I'm wheeling myself out of the room here. I just can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. That's crazy because when you put the bishop on c6, you have to be attuned to these kinds of things.
And it was a very natural sacrifice because black had two minor pieces for the queen, and so sometimes you give back some of your extra material to make your life easier. He unfortunately made the game lost, but Nihal, he escapes with it. Now he's up 4 points, and with 36 minutes left in the 3+1, at some point Sarana just has to start winning because the bullet is favoring Nihal.
Yeah, and we know Nihal's bullet is just something out of the stuff of legend, but essentially, I've been observing in these matches that 4, I think, is sort of the magic X factor number, Robert. It's completely anecdotal, but I feel like when the lead is at 4, you win a game, okay, it gets manageable. You lose, the lead gets to the half a decade mark. That's pretty extensive. I feel like this is the important game. And look at the odds. Oh,
yeah.
Those are not favoring Alexey, let me tell you.
No, they're not. And it's because Nihal's bullet skills are pretty much second to Hikaru. Maybe there are a couple other people who can claim that they're better than him, but not many. And from the onset of this match, that was the expectation. We can bring up the chess goals, smart chess predictions. It was Nihal dominating in the 1+1, the quickest time control, because he's just exceptional. And it was supposed to be, according to the predictions, that Sarana would get out to a lead in the early stages. That has not happened, so it's been all Nihal in the match.
I'm looking at the live bullet rankings of the people logged in on Chess.com. There's 2 people ahead of Nihal in bullet. He's 32.79. You want to hear who they are? Hikaru on Twitch and Hikaru.
So it's one person, 2 accounts.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's like when I was watching the U.S. team play basketball in the Olympics, and they asked the coach of, I think, Spain or something, well, who's the 3 most dangerous teams that the Spanish basketball team will be competing against? And he said, well, I'll name 3. The USA, the United States, and the U.S. So Nihal, not many who can compete with him in bullet. This is the time for Alexey to do something.
For sure. And, we see in this position right now, it is even material. The king on h1, it just dropped over there. There's some ideas of rook g1, I guess, but are we really believing in that? I mean, why king h1 there?
Well, because it's Russian move. Russian shift the king away. Okay, rook g1. Yeah, I don't like this pawn structure. It's just there's too many weaknesses. And knight e4 is possible here, getting that bishop uncontested. I know it's going to be blocked in by the d-pawn, but man, if that d-pawn moves, there will be hell to pay.
For sure. And this bishop can go to c8 and wrap itself around. And actually, it starts on that journey just now. But what's interesting about this, Danya, is the c3 pawn, the a3 pawn, it's a split over on the queen side. And Nihal doesn't go for that. He instead first reroutes the bishop, and watch out for bishop a4.
Bishop a4.
Win an exchange. But wouldn't you go after the c3 pawn?
I would, but I'd be a little bit worried about the g file. G5.
No.
I know, I'm kidding.
It's actually probably not that bad of a move, but...
Actually, yeah, it's one of those things. Maybe king f8 and g5, you try to turn that on white. These ideas can be very unpleasant psychologically. You feel like, man, my opponent's helping me, but you don't see the refutation. Now, is white threatening bishop takes d5? Probably he is.
You got to be brave to take that. You really must.
You do. But then knight takes d4, bishop f5, and if e4, rook takes d5. But okay.
So bishop d5.
Knight takes d4.
Knight d4, c d4, and bishop f5.
e4, rook takes d5. So he doesn't do it. Again, knight c5. And now I would go after that pawn. Maybe knight a4, rook c8.
Okay, there's knight a4. And I guess rook c1. So he plays queen. He keeps moving this queen around.
He does, yeah. And he all keeps moving the knight around in response.
So queen takes d5. Can I get away with that?
Bishop a4.
Yeah, lose an exchange. But
again, look at the knight, the queen of the dance.
Well, the dance doesn't look so fun anymore for white because that pawn c3 is very weak.
It's a dance of death, especially if that knight gets to d3 or the bishop to a4 or the knight to c3.
Oh my gosh, we're going to see queen b1.
Dancing.
So
what to do?
I feel like black should have some... can I go knight e4?
Knight e4. Yeah, well, bishop takes e4. I feel like that's a worse version because the queen then comes to h5.
And I can't. I need to get my bishop like on the right side of this pawn chain. Like I need to have my bishop on e4.
Mm-hmm. And again, the time situation, but knight back to a4.
What about c4? Can you play that?
Oh yeah, queen d4. The queen is defended very importantly.
Yeah, I thought you could try that, but he's
Yeah,
going.
I was thinking about some sacrifices.
Wait, 16 seconds for black? Where'd all the time go?
It evaporated. Now, what exactly does Alexey do? I would double on the g file.
You can also take on e6 because you take with the pawn to protect e5.
Yeah, and then
you
double g6 square. You slam a rook in there.
But there is you giving up an attack on c3
also,
if you move the knight out the way.
Oh yeah, that is true. And if you move the rook to g1, you're also then white is giving up the c3 square. f5.
Okay, taking on d5, I guess.
Oh, queen d4 is a fork. Look at that. Noticing the undefended pieces, and bishop g4 is also in the mix.
Okay.
The wheels are coming off here for Nihal.
You're right, because he's bringing the knight back to e6, but he had to give up a couple pawns here on the king's side if queen takes h6.
But this is a chance.
Oh.
Knight b3. Oh, but then queen b4 check. Wow.
Good find. Good realization.
But you know Nihal's he's going to fight tooth and nail. He's never easy to bring down.
I mean, this already is getting better for black because you cannot move the rook, otherwise you lose your bishop with check. And if you take on e4, I can take with the queen, trade them off, and say, hey, good luck to you. You can even take with the pawn, but I would take with the queen. Trade off those queens.
Knight e4 is a great move. With 6 seconds on the clock. And this is... Alexey just has to find a way to win this game. And yet, a lion's share of his advantages just evaporated.
You know, it's funny. I really do think time and time again that Nihal is in trouble. And then he's always proving me wrong. That, hey, any time more than 0 seconds is enough for him. But 3, okay, he gets that move off. And rook a1, watch out for a7. Rook c7.
Rook c7, yeah.
Yeah, but now c3 is not under attack, at least not in the same way.
True, and Alexey goes at rook g8 was possible.
Rook h6, rook b6. Rook h6,
and
there's rook g8 check. There's rook g8 check.
And then you take the rook. Wow.
So that's the
incredible.
idea. Rook
now
check
what now? And then a b and rook c1 maybe?
But you're up a pawn.
He's going to move.
You're
rook
up.
C1.
Rook takes b6.
Rook takes b6, that's
3
another
pawn. Oh my gosh.
But he's going after white's pawns. White's pawns are very weak here.
King f3, king g3, save those pawns.
And f3 if rook c4. But then you take on b4.
Oh, he's just trying to give him rook f6.
This is a really nice move.
King f3, and that's take on f7.
This should be winning for white now, 2 pawns to the good.
Oh, and you're also going to mate this king. Rook d7. So take on.
I would take d5.
Be careful though. Because you don't have rook f8 check as king g3. But rook f8 check is now the threat, so he puts his rook on f5. You can't leave the last rook.
I know it sounds crazy, but you've got to always watch for stalemate ideas here.
Rook h5 check. Rooks. Rook h5. Bam.
Rook g8. Oh, rook b4, and doesn't matter. Rook f4.
Yeah, f4.
Or king g5. Yeah. Just making sure there. Yeah.
Or king g6 led to mate actually, but this is
fighting to the last drop of blood is Nihal, but this is winning pretty straightforwardly.
Yeah, rook e6. The pawns just push themselves together, and it's winning.
And no reason not to spend a couple more seconds if you're Nihal. You're up 4 points. Every second counts. But this, still a lot of time.
But Daniel, this is the first time that Nihal's time trouble has cost him because he's been in the midst of time scramble after time scramble.
Wait a second.
No, this has to be winning. This is 100% is winning. Check.
Yeah, e6. Okay, continue. E6, sorry.
Yeah. No, you worried me. I was looking at it like, wait, is there any way this isn't winning? Okay, and the king g3.
Yeah, no, this is winning. This is winning. Yeah, if the pawns were on the g and h files,
that's a different story for sure.
Right. But I rudely interrupted you. You were saying this is the first time Nihal's time pressure has costed him. I agree. I mean, costed. That's not.
Yeah, I was like,
costs.
Yeah, but anyway, the point is that finally Alexey can feel like he's in this match because it must be so frustrating when you are just kind of cruising in many games, but you can't score the full point.
You can't.
Now the time's come.
Just so quick on his feet. I mean, he's able to generate these chances with 2 seconds on the clock. It's crazy, but this is a big game for Alexey. It shrinks the lead to 3, and this next game is just as important. He's going to have the black pieces. Let's see if he can shrink this lead further and half it. Okay,
so it's 7.5, 4.5, and will we get a repetition of the lines that we've been seeing?
We have a Grunfeld.
Okay.
I always like the matches, and I'm a little biased in favor of that. Different openings, different types of positions. And can I ask your permission for something, Robert? I made the mistake of bringing some chocolate here, and I have this little chocolate bar. Not a bar, it's a square, and I really want to get into it, but can I mute myself for 1 second and just get rid of this while you talk?
You certainly can,
Thank you.
Danya. Appreciate how considerate you were there. I'm a little jealous because you didn't send me a chocolate bar, but that's okay.
This is amazing.
This line is quite sharp, in fact, because black can steal this a2 pawn. White has the better center here, but the
Whoa.
Queen b3,
knight b3. Okay, defends the pawn.
You defend the pawn. So this is typical. More pawns in the center, an extra pawn for white, but black has the queenside pawn majority. So in the immediate position, white should be favored, but in the long term, in the prospects of the end game, black is the one who should be happy because of the. Oh, but here I think white is just crashing through, like d5 immediately.
Yeah, and in the Grunfeld, there's a couple of interesting things to point out. One of them is that I always point this out: the pawn majority for black on the queen side, right? It's 2-on-1. It favors black in a pawn endgame because in a pawn endgame, it's going to be easier to create an outside passer. But in a middle game, a queenless middle game, white's got that central pressure. So as long as he can keep the pieces on the board, stick a rook on c7, keep the c-file dominance, white is totally in control of the game.
Yes, indeed. And because pieces belong in the center, they have more opportunities from central squares. That's why having pawns in the center is good. It restricts the pieces. And here, knight b4. Are you really going after the a2 pawn? Can I throw rook c7 in to start, hitting your bishop, hitting your b7 pawn, threatening bishop c5, which hits your knight on b4 and your pawn e7? That just looks good for white to me.
Totally. And I'm just a little distracted because I'm discussing my chocolate choices with the chat here. But yeah, no, rook c7. I mean, the pawns start just getting mowed down and vacuumed up by the rook.
Yeah.
Now, what else?
I just trying to find.
Wait, so what are we? Okay, rook c7.
Yeah, rook c7, then bishop c5.
Now, but wait a second.
Yeah.
Knight takes a2, bishop takes d8, bishop takes e7, and then then I lose. It reminds me, I don't know if I have time to share this story. The one time I got told off at a chess camp.
Just once.
By my former, coach and amazing player, Grandmaster Gregory Kaidanov. He would host a lot of U.S. chess schools in Kentucky where he lives. And one camp, there was this inside joke among the participants of the camp. We would share a line that we knew was bad, only to say, and I lose at the end of it. And for some reason, that was funny to us. And I took that joke way too far. And on the last day, I kept sharing these lines and saying, and I lose. And Kaidanov finally caught on to it. He's like, he tells me in Russian in the middle of the camp, Kaidanov, one more time, and we're going to have a serious talk. And I'm going to have a serious talk with your mother after the class. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And I got beat red. Yeah. Anyway, you thought I wasn't a troll. You thought I wasn't a troll. All the trolls out there, you're wrong.
Yeah, you were the example made, and you deserved it clearly. What is happening in this game? Because
I think I lose.
Nihal's down to about a minute. There are two pawns that can be captured, b7 and e7. But is this that kind of like typical Grunfeld compensation where even though you're down something, in this case a pawn, that your pieces are working well?
Yeah, I mean, with the Grunfeld, it's one of those openings similarly to the King's Indian, Robert, where it doesn't matter how bad your position is optically, you're always going to have certain chances, certain counterplay on one of the flanks. And here we see knight c3. He can try to go for bishop b5. That knight on b7 is a little bit stuck, but it's got plenty of evacuation squares. Now, where does the bishop go? F3 or d3? He goes to d3. Definitely, yeah. Now, bishop b5 getting prepared, though. I'm telling you, that knight on c3 in combination with the rook on c8, it poses some difficulty to white.
Yes, because once the bishop gets to b5, you take with the a pawn. The a3 pawn feels like more of a target. The knight on c3 stops this rook from going to c1. There would be knight e2 check ideas. So not easy for Nihal to figure this out. He is up a pawn, but he's down a minute and 15 seconds.
Again. Ooh, and bishop d4 was an idea there even.
Oh, nice. Bishop d4 trying to remove the guard of the rook on c1. Watch out, knight e2. He stops.
Yeah, watch out. Now the rook on c8 is undefended. Rook c4 meets with, rook c4 f3 even.
How about rook a8?
Then rook a4. Just rook a directly.
Yeah, I'm attacking this, and then
I
e4
like it.
is falling.
But bishop c5 maybe?
Oh, we're gonna have to count one by one here.
Yeah.
So Alexey wisely is spending his time right now.
This is a big moment. Yeah.
So rook a8, rook b8, rook c4. He plays rook b8 to hit the knight, and then he can take e4 if he wants it.
Yeah, and knight c6 is what Nihal's aiming for. Wait a minute. He had knight c6, knight takes c7 check, by the way. Rook c8, bishop h6.
Is there some kind of b4 at some point? I can't take on b4 because rook c8 check would turn the tables.
Right. And by the way, there is a cool idea by Nihal, instead of rook c7, to go knight c6 and then take on e7.
Right.
But this is also very good. I mean, he's going for the activity. This is looking very bad. Now, knight c6, he wants knight takes d5. But even there, we go rook d7. I like knight c6 here for... Oh, but knight takes e3 is check.
Knight c6, knight d5, and then...
And rook moves and knight takes e3. 4 seconds, he's got to move.
Okay, now knight d5.
Oh, and he missed it, I think.
So knight e7 check and just try to make a draw. Oh, he doesn't do it.
Yeah, but knight e3, that's the key.
Yeah, now knight e3 and then rook a8.
Does Alexey see it?
Yes,
yeah, he does.
But this is an extra pawn for black all of a sudden.
But he's going to win it back. Oh, but rook a8, and all of a sudden you can take on e3.
So knight e7, the knight back to c6. You can't take on a3 because rook d8 would be mate.
The activity of white's pieces, I think, guaranteed.
No, but this is clearly better for black.
Yeah, no, he's got an attempt here. He takes on h2.
He wins a pawn.
He does, and the time advantage, again, makes it very hard to defend. Oh, my goodness.
Rook a1, because you always a bishop g1 check. But I would move the bishop back to d6.
h5.
That is h5, okay.
It's the obligatory move in all endgames.
Does feel that way often. And a note to everybody, the bishop does not match the corner, h1. So if I can trade off the f and g pawns, we got this.
Robert, this is where I get stressed out.
Gotta move. You gotta move. Rook f5 is going bishop g3. Bishop g3. Oh, here's rook f2 check. King e7 or king g7.
Oh.
Rook f2, rook takes g2. Thank you for a pawn.
He literally was showing 0, 0, 0, but now black is simply just winning on the position.
Yeah, that pawn is too good. Bishop anywhere. Bishop e1, maybe.
Yeah. And we can see
wait. He blundered a pawn. No, h3
Whoa! Here? h3, knight takes e5, h2, rook h4.
Oh, he blundered one of his pawns.
That's a huge pawn.
Okay, but the knight's trapped.
But the knight is trapped. But he untraps it, knight f3. Look at Nihal. Maneuvering here, defending, incredible.
Wow. I mean,
it's
Alexey
still hard to defend, though.
He had that, though.
In the bag. And now Nihal pushing his pawn up. The rook is activated. He's threatening e6.
So king e7, and then keep bringing the king up. With bishop b2. Okay, but bishop c5, no rook a7 check. But I thought the bishop was going to b2 to hit the e5 pawn. He does this way, king d7.
Huge game. Careful.
Yeah, don't take on e5 because you drop f5.
The rook on a dark square also worries me. Okay, never mind.
So king c6. No, king c6, knight d4 check. Don't play that.
Right. Now king, okay, bishop b8 covers it up. Knight d, king moves now.
Wait, bishop e5 hangs. And then rook okay, only move.
Okay, defends the pawn. King e4 now centralizing. Oh, knight d4. He blundered knight d4. Oh, my lands. Is this a draw?
f6.
He's got to find f6 as a draw. Unbelievable.
Wow. Just wow.
Unbelievable.
And for Nihal, he can just waste more time.
I would decline it. And Sarana, you can just see the frustration. He knows it's a draw, but he can't believe it. I mean, he just had that in the bag.
Yeah, and he's wasting more time from this 3-minute portion. We know that Nihal is the favorite in the bullet. Yeah. And, I mean, Nihal, in his time trouble, he has really struggled at points over the board, but the results are still in his favor.
The man is unbelievable. He finds, chance after chance. He complicates it. His time was dipping to 0.01 second, and he found the chance to win a pawn. That was incredible defense. And now, wait a second now, Robert.
Be careful.
The king is in the wrong corner. Your king is supposed to be in the other corner. This is actually going to be very, very hard to defend.
Well, it's still a draw, but it's going to take forever.
It is, and Nihal, we talk about this. It's not like unethical or anything to play this. He has every right to, and he should bleed the clock because this is also easy to blunder in. Yeah, and he gets the king to the right corner.
The important part of this endgame is that the king for white cannot create opposition because you can check it off when it's on a dark square. So, oh no!
Oh my goodness! No. It's a no! Wow.
And Nihal laughed. You saw that? He laughed a little bit.
He did, and Sarana smiling as well. He's just like, what do I have to do?
Oh my gosh!
Oh,
I
my
mean,
lands.
it's just
That is just crazy.
I'm gonna bring up the last game very
Crazy.
quickly. I need to analyze just something to show people where Sarana blew his advantage because way back when.
Yep.
I don't even know what move here was. H4, knight G5, and if you had to play bishop E1, there's a big difference that when the knight comes to F3, you could still play H3 because you don't have access to this H4 square.
Mhm.
So if knight E1, I just push to H2 and I get a queen. It's not going to be the easiest win in the world, but that way your pawn could go. Wait, there's rook H4. Oh, I'm missing the rook H4 move. What? So I blundered it as myself. So
wait a second. Oh wait, I have an idea. Oh my! Oh, it doesn't work. I thought something crazy, but no.
Maybe just like any other move, like rook
B2. Yeah, just go somewhere.
Wow.
It is something like this.
Way more difficult than I expected. I thought it was just going to be easily winning, but actually there are tricks that allow maybe even F6 to kick the knight. Yeah, I see the bar still agrees with that. So it was this winning position. Oh, bishop covers C7. That's very important. So
but
that
it's
was
easy
winning.
to assume your opponent, with no time, is just going to let the pawn through, but not Nihal.
Oh my gosh, I mean, that's the thing, right? Even in post-game analysis, I'm like, oh, it should be easy. Wait a sec. There's still these little tricks here.
It's crazy.
Just must be so frustrating to have these kind of positions.
And not only to not win it, but then to
lose it.
To lose it is just a knife. I mean, that's just a dagger.
Yeah,
but he's better again. You've got one of those end games, and I feel like once again White is better. But we've seen this been the narrative of the match. Better. Time pressure for Nihal, but he finds every single chance.
Yeah, and rook G1 just played to defend the bishop, I guess, and maybe try to go for a G5. This feels like one of these positions where it's not clear where the punches are going to be thrown, but you just need to do something as you're down 4 points here. Wow, yeah. 14 minutes left. I mean, Alexey needs to start getting on streaks. He can't just win one game and then have Nihal strike back. Alexey needs to win 2 in a row.
He needs to win 2, and he needs to have the lead within 2 points. I think, yes, Nihal is without a doubt the favorite of the bullet, but Alexey has been fast. He's been on form, and anything can happen in the bullet. We know that, but he needs to set himself up for that. If it's a 4 or 5 point lead, someone like Nihal, I mean, he's just not going to let that slip, I think.
No, he will not. And both players have had this kind of setup from both colors, and it is an end game where the rook on b5 is very nice, putting pressure on b2. The a4 pawn could be considered overextended, but not so easy to get to.
Ooh.
And what's happening here?
This is interesting. Now rook takes c5. He wants to get his knight around maybe, but now he comes back to b5. He ties himself to that b2 pawn.
Okay. There was some kind of like knight d5, knight f4 check stuff, but
there is now knight d5 now to stop knight c3. Maybe should be considered. Again, the time in Sarana's favor is up a minute, but it's like doesn't matter.
Maybe he should try going down a minute and see if that helps.
Right, exactly. He should just sit there until he's got 30 seconds.
He's been up a minute plenty of times and it's not working out for him, and Nihal just very sharp in these critical moments. So let's see. Knight d5 you mentioned is a way to stop knight c3. How big of a deal is knight c3? You play knight c3, I play rook a5. You attack my pawn, I defend it.
True.
And b6.
B6, okay, that's a pretty committal move, but I suppose he's, well, rook d2. Now, the thing that one has to be concerned about if you're Nihal, those pawns on the queen side, I mean, they're just weak, they're tender, but he's trying to use active defense here, ward off the immediate pressure.
Yeah, if you go c5, my king can actually even consider coming up to the c4 square, or my knight.
Does exactly that.
All right, so you can't play b5, the c5 pawn is hanging.
This is very unpleasant. King e5, maybe?
Ooh, I guess.
Can you make that sound effect again?
No, I don't think I can ever.
Now, nobody, it's like this person does not exist.
Wait, king b5? Excuse me?
Rook, don't get mated though.
I'm not going to get
e5? King e5?
King e5?
Yeah.
That's probably a good move.
Knight c3 though.
Yeah.
At that point, you can trade knights.
Wait, is there a mate? So I need to
that's a rook c4, rook a5.
Yeah, that would be a self-mate. Good. But if I go rook d1, are you playing rook a5 and king c6?
And
nice.
rook d5, b5.
Nice. Check. Here, king c6, rook d5. Oh, free knight. Just kidding. b5 check. Thank you for
And he
your
does
rook in
it.
the center.
Maybe knight d6 here? I don't know. No, that's crazy. Okay.
So knight back to c3. And
so
you can...
b5,
no,
knight b5, knight b6.
Oh, very clever. I was like, b5 has to work.
Unbelievable. Again, he's knight b6, knight c4 is an idea. The question is, does he keep the knights? He's got to decide fast. No, but rook a8, I mean, is he even worse?
Probably not. Rook a7, just to keep the 7th rank defended, make sure g7, h7 feel nice and safe over there. And, well, he takes king c e4. He wants to go king e3, f4, but this could be a risky endgame.
Yep. And, well, okay, the pawn endgame, again, we talked about the smaller pawn majority, g5.
Oh, g5 looks very good.
That's crunching through. And then the king comes to e5. This is winning for black.
It must be.
It is, and g5 ends the game.
He's still
thinking. He's calculating it.
There he goes.
Here's
g5. And
boom.
You have to play e5.
But then gf f3, and you get, as they call them, trousers in Russian. You would go c4, and then b4 and c3.
Okay, well, let's see how this happens.
You don't even want to go b4. You're going to go f3.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. You start pushing the pawns through.
And then you go c4. The one thing you got to be careful about, f3, c4. Okay, this also works. This is the conventional method. And wait a second.
Yeah, he's going to do it.
You got to be careful, c4 and c3. Oh, c3 and a3.
And it was super important that c3 attacks something, because we'll show this in another win for Nihal. Great technique. We'll bring up this game just to show you a very important sequence here. That after b4 check king to d3, b takes a3 would be incorrect, because when you get to this position, now when you play c4, c3, you're not actually attacking the pawn on b2. So in the event of f3, king e3, c4, I take, and c3 doesn't threaten c takes b2, and so I can just play king e3, and I'm in the box, right? My king is just in time to survive this. So that would be a really bad decision to
easy to do something like that, but taking his time, and this is, I mean, incredible display here.
Right, typical pawn sacrifice. That's one of the initial end games you learn, is you give up a pawn in the center and then spring free another. So this was a really nice finish by Nihal, and another game by Alexey where you're just like, is there any way to beat this guy? Like, I try my best.
What kind of position do I need to get? How much of a time pressure do I need to put this guy in? Doesn't matter. He's going to find chances. Now, we have a very unbalanced position. Alexey doing what he has to. And we remind the viewers that Alexey, a trooper for playing this during a tournament. He's playing the Russian higher league, which is far from something to sneeze at. And he's been tremendous here. So this is certainly not a match that I would call over. He's going to try his best. But these last 10 minutes are pivotal if he wants any chance at all of fighting back.
Yeah, and for Alexey, maybe he used up a lot of his good fortune against Jeffrey, because in those first 3 games, I mean, Alexey himself said in the post-match interview, he's like, I was losing, I was lost, and somehow he scored 2.5 out of 3 in those games against Jeffrey. And I don't think this is exactly the same scenario, but there have been times where Nihal has just been in trouble, and yet he is the one who has just been claiming all of the points. I mean, 9.5, 4.5 against a player of Alexey's caliber. After beating Haik Martirosyan by an incredible score, Nihal Sarin is just worthy, right? That guy is going to be in the Speed Chess Championship if he keeps this up, and he is not going to be an easy out no matter which Super Grandmaster he faces.
And he's got a very bright future in tournament chess as well. He's incredibly, what's always struck me about him is how versatile he is. He can play so many different types of positions. He's only 16 years old. He's over 2,600, so he is a force to be reckoned with, as, of course, is Alexey Sarana. And it's really such a treat to watch these players form and grow before our very eyes.
For sure. And I'm looking at this game, Danya, the Botvinnik variation, always immensely complicated. What's going on with this b4, c3? You typically don't want to allow that protected pawn on c3. You would like to play a3 and start chipping away. But that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And I like Sarana's position here.
Well, I do as well. The one thing that concerns me is, of course, this queen on d5. It's under the x-ray of the bishop. There's nothing that white can do with it here. Oh, that's a brave move, isn't it? Rook d1, queen e5 is his idea, or queen b6?
Yeah, and you can't castle kingside because of this bishop.
That is a problem. But you could go knight t6 in some of these positions. And then you have like crazy ideas of sacking on e6.
Right, you can just like bring all the forces
But
in.
I agree with you, Robert. This is not looking good for white.
And at the very least for Alexey, a draw is heading into losing territory because you need to start winning. We keep talking about this, and you have chances here, that's for sure. What's the material count? White has 6 pawns, black has... Wait, it's even material?
Wait, it is? What? Yeah. No, it's not. 6 pawns to 6 pawns.
I'm looking at this as if there's some kind of material
imbalance. Black's up 4 pawns, white's up 3 pawns. No, that's crazy. I was exactly in the same boat.
Well, this H2 pawn doesn't really feel relevant yet, but in endgames in particular, you just start running that pawn up the board, and black's pawns look far more menacing on b4 and c3.
Yeah, but you could play a3, perhaps undermine them.
That's true. That's a useful idea. So c5. Ooh. Wait, what?
Whoa.
Excuse me, isn't there not a rook on a8 that is not happy to see the bishop on g2?
Oh, it's the bishop on g2 is happy to see the rook.
Okay, so we have this. f6 is hanging. Oh, bishop e5 first.
Okay, but now what I was worried about is queen e4, bishop c6.
So queen e4, protecting the bishop, but also allowing bishop c6 with a pin.
Well, I guess black has some... Okay, drops his bishop back. He takes a more measured approach. Maybe bishop e2 he wants to play and just castle. But bishop b7,
yeah.
Look at that diagonal. That is literally...
Have fun castling, Danya. That's what
right, exactly.
In fact, castling, queen c6, f3, there's knight g4, you take on h2. This is under attack here. No.
But, okay, but knight g4, if we extend that line, knight g4, I'm going to go bishop g5, and I'm going to threaten mate of my own.
Oh, I'm going to play it. Oh, if I have f6, you queen g6. You're just a mean... I'll throw in bishop d4 check. I have to stop you from mating.
Yes, I'm going to take it.
What are you doing here?
Queen d3.
Yeah, you don't believe in this position.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Oh, man. So
he's always found something, though.
Wait, he went queen back to c7.
I don't know about that, though. He's threatening bishop g3. I mean, that's clearly the idea.
13 seconds. 10 seconds about to be had by Nihal.
Here we go with this again.
How can you defend this? If he defends this position with 7 seconds on the clock.
Crazy. Queen, I mean, I guess he can play queen f2.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, now he's threatening mate. Again, it's mate.
Oh, my goodness. And rook c8 is obviously not the move to play.
Once again, knight d5 maybe Alexey should have played. Because now knight d5, you could take and open up that e-file.
True. And there's also bishop c5 check that you have to worry about because the knight on d5 means that the bishop on e5 is not defended once something captures c5.
I'm telling you, this is unbelievable. Bishop g5 is another idea on f4. Oh, although that does open up the long diagonal.
Yeah.
Bishop
c5? Oh my.
Oh, rook d6, rook d6. And the wheels come off.
So
he takes everything.
Keeping the pin alive, removing the defender with the c3 pawn.
Unbelievable.
Queen c4. Oh my god, so precise trading the queens.
Queen c5. Wow.
Just trade them. This rook is still pinned here.
Phenomenal form. And he resigns. Unbelievable turnaround.
I mean, the guy is a defensive maestro.
Yeah, he is. Karyakin has that nickname, Minister of Defense, but Nihal has something to say about that in this match.
He's reminding me of Grishuk, honestly, playing better with no time on his clock.
Exactly. He's just waiting for his time to tick down. Says, all right, now time to turn it on.
And Alexey played e4 in this game, by the way. So now we have a martial attack where black is down a pawn, but has plenty of compensation, especially if you're g3. You look at the light squares around white's king. That's something that you would like to take advantage of. But this is still theoretical territory.
And the lead is ballooned to 6 points. And that is a huge, huge lead, given the kind of form that Nihal is in. What does Sarana do? How much time is left in the match? 2 minutes. This might be the last game of the 3-minute segment. We've been saying it all along. I mean, 93, by the way. Oops. 93. Is that not? I mean, rook takes e3, knight e4 wins the exchange back. But remember, black sacked a pawn, and he can win it back. Oh, this is just collapsing here.
Yeah, no good.
Alexey.
No good. Knight e4 just rook takes e4, as you were suggesting, and then you
black is now better.
Back. Yeah, you have 2 bishops. And I mean, your opponent also has 2 bishops, but your bishops are better developed. Your king is safe, and you have Can't play f5 now, but I'm looking at king h8, f5, f4 as an option. You can
Rook e8 also.
Rook e8 also looks good. You're right.
Yeah, this is nasty. And you feel for Alexey, you know, it's something we talk about this, you know, you take blow after blow, and at some point you just reach the end of your rope. What do I have to do? You know, I'm getting these positions, I can't convert them. And, you know, the tilt sort of happens gradually. And, you know, we can celebrate the amazing performance by Sarin while also sympathizing with Alexey, who has put his heart on the line every one of these matches.
Yeah, he has, and he's not going to give up, even though he's down by 6 points, and Nihal happens to be the better bullet player. But he must be so frustrated, and like, what can he do? What more can he do? He needs to put away the games where he has an advantage. That obviously has been in his control throughout the entire match. But most people, they get down to their waning seconds, they just lose the game with any move that's played. Nihal, not one of those guys.
It's incredible. And not only is he able to find quality moves, what impresses me is that he's not deterred by sudden moves. In time pressure, normally with 2 seconds, you don't have time to react to something crazy, but it seems like he spends those last 2 seconds and then generates a move. It's an incredible sight to behold. But we know that in the bullet, there is more than 7 or 8 games played. So mathematically, anything is possible, and neither of these players is giving up or relaxing.
Yeah, actually, something you were just saying is very striking. It's almost as if Nihal is anticipating the unexpected, and that is so hard to train yourself to do. Like, when you have 3 seconds in your clock and there's a full board, so many different options, but to be able to expect maybe a move on the other side of the board, or one just that doesn't really do much of anything, so you also have to make a patient move. So hard to train that
kind of focus and board vision and talent that takes is incredible, and he possesses all of that and more.
And let's see, this endgame is looking good for black, because after queen e4, fe4, maybe it should be a draw, but white can't punch through his pawn majority at all. And now, he just took on a4 because the bishop was hanging. He played a3, and black has an extra pawn.
And now a passed pawn, and now a bishop endgame is also going to be winning for black. And this might be another win, and that would be a 7-point game coming into the 1-minute segment. So Sarana's got to try to save this, but...
So a draw? Probably would be my guess.
Oh, yeah, he does. Oh, he simply forks. But Nihal says, okay, no reason to go crazy. It's a 6-point game, and a miracle, only a miracle, is going to save Sarana from the clutches of Nihal Sarin.
What more is there to say than Nihal Sarin is an absolute monster? The guy is not to be deterred. From the very beginning of the match, was thinking, hey, he's getting some time trouble. Sarana thrives in those situations, but it has been all Nihal Sarin, the grandmaster, teenager from India. He's such a superstar right now, and he has big sponsorship deals, and he's about to win this Junior Speed Chess Championship and make his way to the Speed Chess Championship, where, as I said, Danya, I really think he could pull off a first-round upset there.
Indeed, I believe he can. He is incredibly talented. He is delivering on his reputation, but he has 30 minutes of 1+1 left, and so does Sarana, to make a miracle happen. We'll see whether that, in fact, occurs, but first the players are going to take a break, and so are we.
We'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned. And we return ready for the bullet portion of this match. Danya, it looks like it's Nihal Sarin's match to win, but there is a lot of prize money at stake, and the prizes are given by win percentage. So it's not just the winner and loser get X amount of dollars. No. Every single game counts. And as you see here, $2,500 to the winner and the invitation to the Speed Chess Championship, plus the rest is split by win percentage, another $2,500. So, Danya, quite a big payday.
Indeed, a lot at stake and a lot of pride at stake, and definitely the Speed Chess Championship, a very coveted ticket at stake as well. So not only are they still playing for the match, and it's never over till it's over, but as you mentioned, every single game counts in terms of the prize money. So we have 30 minutes of bullet here, 6-point lead for Nihal. That's huge, obviously, particularly considering how much of a beast he is in bullet. We can see already Alexey has taken his seat. He's prepared him. What do you tell yourself if you're Alexey in this situation? Nothing.
You had a great run. Second place is still a phenomenal performance. So kudos to you. Now you have to just move. Honestly, I don't know how to beat Nihal Sarin in bullet chess. If I did, I would be somewhere much closer to his rating. But you just have to move, and you have to win immediately. So you don't. If you draw a game and it takes you 4 minutes, it's equivalent to a loss at this point because you're down so much on the scoreboard. So you just have to move as quickly as possible and hope that it works out for you.
No, I don't know how to beat him as well, and we've seen him put on a display in the bullet and win the match in the bullet segment alone. And I agree. I mean, following your intuition is absolutely key. Just forcing it out of yourself, essentially, and not taking that 30 seconds, in the critical moments.
I just, this is a lesson that if you are Sarana, you would have hoped you've learned it earlier in the match, because now it's bullet that is, it is Nihal's forte, and we're off here 11-5, and we are getting a QGD, a Ragozin heading our way.
Indeed. We've seen a lot of openings here on display, which I really like, different structures, different approaches, and this is a very solid line for white. And one of Black's ideas, of course, Black has the two bishops. Normally, Black goes a6, bishop d6. Okay, he takes on c3. That's a more modern approach to this line. But I've always felt like white is slightly better in the structure. He's got that b-file pressure. He's got that wedge in the center.
Right. You have the extra pawn right in the center here, very safe and sound. There are no useful discoveries. You can move your knight to e5, but that would have just allowed the queen to retreat. So e5 played, the queen moves back, and that's what's so nice about having the c3, e3 pawns. The center is reinforced. So down here, knight a5, trying to make use of the light squares on the queen side. Is Black in time to seize control of them?
Well, he's gone e4. That's pretty interesting. And I suppose that's what the battle is going to revolve around. What is going to happen in the center? Knight b3 is possible. He plays it. And then c4, d5. White is definitely better, I think, even if from a practical perspective. But I do really like what Sarana is doing. He keeps challenging Nihal's control over the center.
Yeah, and it's rook d2, rook d1. And if you take on d4, take the rook. Use that open file to your advantage. You play c4.
c4, driving it in. h3.
And yeah, with pieces on the board, it's better to have more pawns towards the center. That's why the b3, c4 configuration is nice. In the pure endgame, having the outside pass pawn could be useful, but he takes with the bishop on c4, no outside pass pawn for you. Dino, this is just better pieces, pretty much every single one for white.
Yeah, beautiful outpost, squares, queen e5. Now, a4 is one thing you have to watch out for, which Nihal takes care of with this move, rook a6. This is, the d file, okay, queen g5 defends the a5 pawn. The rook does leave the d file, and Nihal, very solid, going for the queen trade. He doesn't even really mind the long draws. Not to suggest this is a draw. Alexey's the one who has to prove the defense here.
In fact, how does Black keep this
I don't
a5
even
pawn?
see how Black survives, honestly.
It's another tough position here. I mean, you take on a5 right away.
Crunches that pawn.
And you still have complete control over the d file. You can't even get a rook d8 or rook d7. So just painful, honestly.
Indeed. And now he's going to add an attack to the mix. Rook d8 is a threat. Queen d8. That's a good move.
Practical.
Very practical. He's up a pawn. He can play this for a year, and he's probably winning at the end of it.
Yeah,
this is the ideal set of circumstances.
e4 in a light square. There it goes. Bishop d5. Thank you for the pawn. And was the king going to go to h4 and self-mate? Rook d5 check is coming.
Oh, got to try it.
Here's rook d5.
Yeah, g5. h5. Now, I would just take. Well, no, it takes bishop h3. h5 is actually a very good move.
I was thinking f3 because you don't have rook c2 check. But there might be like rook a7, you know, and trying to get around that way.
Ooh, rook d4 is nice because now if you take on g4, you walk into a pin. Now the b pawn goes. And this has been a story of the d file. That won him the game. He collected the pawns, and it's symbolic that his rook remains on the d file all throughout, essentially.
Yeah, king g3 now should be good. He puts b5. He's going to keep pushing the pawn. Rook b4 is also possible if need be.
b7.
Rook d8 next.
Yep, it's over. And another win for Nihal, and such a smooth game, particularly for Bullet.
He's up 20 seconds. He's winning the game, and there's a resignation, 32-83. So his rating has actually decreased since we started the Junior Speeches Championship. He'll live with that, right? I think he'll be okay.
32-83. Come on, let's get serious here, Nihal.
What a slacker!
I know,
but yeah, he'll be okay with losing 20 bullet points as long as he makes his way to the SEC.
Absolutely, that's what's important here. And we have a Queen's Indian. I mean, yeah, this is just rough. This is rough, but I like White's position in these types of structures because he's got that pressure on the d-pawn. But it's hard to follow through on that. Black can assign all of his resources the task of defending the pawn. And if Black pushes White away, rook d7, he doubles on the d-pawn, things can turn around slowly but surely.
Yeah, the only good news about having some a6 is there could be a knight a4, knight b6 you have to be careful for. Just think about anytime you move a pawn, what the consequence is. And knight f3 check.
Oh, yep. This is he just trades and knight f6. He's following the strategy of playing very solid, long games and not giving anything up, easily.
He's playing so much more quickly, and you may say, duh, it's bullet, but he's playing much more quickly in the bullet and seems more confident. So this is his time control. He did say as much after last match that he loves playing bullet chess. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's terrible at 5-minute chess. He did so badly there.
Just so weak, obviously. No, it just seems like he really finds his form at the end of the match, which is scary when he was already up 6 points heading into the quickest time control.
Right, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And knight e4, I guess. So,
G4, queen f4, knight h5. Oh, you queen a4.
Oh, that's close though.
It's so close.
And he's thinking maybe c4 first.
But then the queen gets the d4 square.
Oh, nah, stop it. Yeah. Why do you have to be so mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. But actually, g4, queen f4, d4 if you ed, then knight h5 does trap the queen.
But I really like this move because knight e5.
Oh, that's something. That's
because I guess you got to move your rook out of the picture.
Wait,
and he just goes back. Huh.
Interesting choice to go back to f6. Rook h8 now a threat, so
yeah.
I think White's trying to go rook h1.
Does he see a rook h8, then rook h1? Probably.
Yeah, you can take queen h3 check, but how far are you really getting there?
Right, not very far. I think you just have to bide your time. Maybe a5.
Maybe d4, a5. Yeah, but it's d4. There's also g4 possibilities.
Just straight along the d file. Black's very solid here, and he's got the passer.
He does, and he can play g4, queen e4, things like that. And
I mean, earlier we would have probably said, well, Nihal has 8 seconds, but we've grown so used to excellence from him with no time on the clock that it doesn't even seem to be a deterrent now.
I wasn't even noticing it, honestly.
Right, exactly.
So d3?
D3, queen takes d5, and rook d3. There was no discovery. He's going to be down a pawn here, I think, but it's not easy to get to that pawn. If you go king e2, you run into knight e4, knight g4, king e2.
Yeah, so
now if you take, there's a fork at the end of it.
Very important. So do you start with knight e2 or something? But then it's knight g4 check and knight back to f6.
Right.
So.
Oh, and black wins. Oh my god! Oh, black was winning there.
Was there king f3?
No, king f3, what am I saying?
But this
f5, I mean...
This is an extra pawn for white, so at least Alexey can play this out. He's very tied down, though.
He is. This could, yeah, knight c3, I guess. Knight h1. Oh, wow, what a move.
That's a hilarious move.
This is going to be a race. It's anybody's game, honestly. I mean, these races, it doesn't matter who's up a pawn. It's about the quality of the passed pawn.
Right, and one pawn does move faster than two because you're moving the two together.
Yeah, but
wait,
here too, yeah, that's not a good transformation, and white should be winning.
King d2. That way you can try to play. You can't play rook b6, so there's rook h2 check. But now the pawns are going b5, a4, etc. And the king is close enough to the f pawn.
Right. B2.
Wait, f3. This is a mistake.
Wait a minute.
Wrong side.
He might be losing here if he is not careful.
He's got to give a bunch of checks.
Yeah, but the king just stops the rook from coming to the 8th rank.
So the black king will go back and forth. King e3 not possible to f2.
That's a good move, though. But he goes rook b4 or something like that.
So rook c1, rook f1. And then after rook a4, there's king's... Oh, he gets rook f5 and king c3. King c3.
Yeah, but now the king approaches, and this is one of those theoretical endgames.
Yeah, should be winning. King, just
rook
the king goes up.
h7. Yeah, b6 at some point simply now.
King c5 or king b5, and keep marching up here.
This has been known since the 17th century. Quite literally.
You build a bridge, and here it comes. King a7, king b6, king c6. King
this never
b5.
gets old. There's a certain elegance to this Lucena plan that always, entices me every time I see it.
I'm going to pull up that last game just for half a second because I want to show something. You know what I would do? Expecting my opponent... I'm losing, right? I know I'm lost. I would play rook c7, hoping for the pre-move of rook b4.
Right.
That way I can take your pawn.
Absolutely.
Silly. But, these are just little bullet tricks that should not work out. I just think that you have to try something.
I got to try what you got to try.
Yep.
And that was a great game by Sarana. I mean, he's staying calm. I don't think he's gotten massively tilted or anything of that sort. I mean, of course, he got upset. I think there were a couple of games where he was under the influence of those games he failed to win. But by and large, he's remained level-headed. It's just been Nihal's incredible form that has carried the match.
Yeah, +6, 20 minutes to go. Technically, there's an outside shot that you can win 6 in a row and tie it. But if we're being realistic, Nihal just the monster of all monsters here. And what's going on in this game? Black is
Bishop
up.
f6 is possible.
But Black is up so much time. Bullet chess, 12 seconds.
I don't think Nihal's been down on time ever in this match, actually.
He's
not very good in time pressure.
No, I mean, got to work on that. So let's see. Now White is down 20 seconds.
And White is in some trouble here.
Black has the bishop. Woo! Queen h7, king of.
But where do you go from here? Because queen g. Okay, but now knight back to
f3. Knight f5. Knight f5.
Oh no, you didn't.
Yes, I did. Knight f5.
That was so cool. That was winning, wasn't it?
This also looks really good, though.
Yeah, it does. D5 crunch.
And d6. Oh my gosh, d6 not only takes away the score, but throws d7, forking your rooks.
Yep, 97. Oh yeah. Then d6 as you mentioned. Ooh.
Oh gosh.
Knight d8 probably you have to try. But then d6 anyway. Again. Oh, that's exactly what you said. Oh my goodness. I can't even stop queen h8 mate.
Can't stop both d6, d7,
it's over.
And d6.
You've got to try to trap the queen somehow and go bishop takes f3. Queen 8. Oh, wow. That's interesting. You could actually take on e7 and take on f3. I think that's a Nihal kind of thing to do.
You can play queen h8, bishop h7, queen g8, mate.
Oh, that's also a Nihal thing to do.
Yeah,
that's a Robert Hess thing to do.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. I rub my itchy nose and just... There's nothing more you can say about this. Just...
Ooh.
It's a demolition.
Absolute demolition. And we have a question that I'm going to air out and put you on the spot, Robert, from our amazing producer and our entire production team, Bick. If you're down this much in a match, how, sort of quote-unquote dirty do you get? Do you lafong someone? Do you go for the bishop h6 trick? Is that totally frowned upon, or is there some sense to just doing that when you're this losing in a match?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're trying to get back on the scoreboard, like who cares how you do it? Most of the time, it's just going to cost you the game, so it won't work and you look silly. But no, I'm serious. It's right. If you do something that's just if you play bishop takes c4, hoping for some pre-move, and they don't pre-move and they just take your bishop, then you look like the fool. But if you play bishop c4 and they make some other move, then you look really smart. So that's really the two ends of that. And personally, when I don't really like bullet regardless, but if I'm playing and somebody does that, it really ticks me off. But then I'm just like, I mean, what? They didn't do anything wrong. They just did something silly, and I fell for it.
I used to take it very personally and get very mad. But you realize that people don't always have this agenda of, deeply disrespecting. People just going for the win, and it's not very nice. But at the end of the day, you just don't pre-move. You're getting a chance to win the game very fast. It's on you that you've decided to pre-move at the end of the day.
Your opponent doesn't owe it to you to be nice on the chessboard.
No, he doesn't.
So, what's going on with Sarana's connection? It feels like he frequently at 1 or 2 bars in this game, and he might just lose on time because
95 c4, and the knight comes into d3, and even without the time disparity. Yeah, 58 seconds to 2 seconds. Look at this. Yeah, the internet is not Sarana's friend here, and neither is the position.
No. And let's see, Queen H5 or knight F3. So the king is going back and forth a little bit.
And he just repeats. Rook d6, by the way, is an interesting idea. He's just going to drop on time, isn't he? Rook d6 and knight g4. Whoa. And he loses on time.
That's brutal.
And indeed, the connection worsening at the worst possible time during the bullet. He's got that one bar, and that's not helping things for Alexey.
Yep. And what is it now? 8 points.
Wow. 14-6 after 20 games played.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Alexey, it's just getting worse with his connection, seems like.
We remind people just joining that Alexey is not playing from home. He's playing from a hotel room. He's playing an over-the-board tournament right now, so huge kudos to Alexey for nonetheless finding the time to play the match. That's, could have easily said, we demanded a reschedule, but really a classy guy, and very modest. We've seen him in the interviews, both of them really. So
absolutely. And for Nihal, he adjusted his schedule to play earlier than expected, and it's certainly panning out for him in this matchup. And for Alexey, he's got a few games of bullet left, and then he'll be playing the Russian Higher League, where of course we wish him the best of luck in that event. It's going to be such a tough event with all of the not just top Russian players, but players flying in for their actually, no, it is just Russian player, right? The Russian Higher League.
I think,
I was thinking
I'm never sure. Yeah, because sometimes in the leagues you can have foreign players. Queen takes a5, that, by the way, but I think was just a pawn.
Oops. Oh, there's bishop b4 at the end of that.
Oh, that's cool.
But this looks still very good.
Driving in the pawn, that's like a London dream. Queen to d2. Look at the piece shifting around. b6 is a good move undermining the pawn.
And now we don't have a symmetrical pawn structure because A versus B, but I think that if you win the B, you lose the A and vice versa. So it's going to be tough to prove an advantage here.
It is. And for Nihal, it's all about, playing solid chess, bleeding out the clock. At this point, there are below 15 minutes left in the match. We remind you, they are also playing for,
wait, bishop f5, knight e1?
Oh, but then bishop b4 maybe. Your move.
Okay, yeah, you sneaky guy.
He just takes on a5 instead. And there is prize money tied up in the actual results, so every game matters.
True.
Knight e5 maybe.
I mean, the position is just better for white because the pawn structure. Black has some current activity, but you need to keep d5, f5, all defended.
And then I jump around.
Knight c5.
Ooh, rook c1 to follow as well. Knight on c2 has to be watched over. Queen a7 looks good.
Oh, going after f7, then going queen to d7 perhaps? Oh,
yep.
Queen d7's next. Queen d7's coming.
Oh, he goes to a4, springs it up here.
And it's hard to even make it. Okay, here comes queen d7. Can't stop it.
Bishop c7 is a really nice move.
That's pain. That's just...
It is flat out pain. And bishop d6, I mean, it's literally just target practice here. Just mowing down the pawns. Knight d7 is also good. Oh, he just takes it with bishop. Knight e4, knight d7, anything.
Knight f6,
another
bishop
pawn
h6. This is no fun.
I mean, he makes it look easy. That expression is overused, and it's a huge cliche, but he makes it look easy.
He does. And he just checkmated the guy. Queen g7, queen g4 is made.
Yep. That's just incredible.
What is happening? Like, it's 15-6, and there's still just under 13 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, one feels for Alexey when you're taking this sort of a beating. You just look at the match clock. And you're like, all right. When will this end? And it's incredible, really, what Nihal's doing.
I wish I had the words to describe what's happening here because Alexey against Samsevian, and that match came down to the final game where Sevian actually had a winning position, but Alexey fended him off and won that game and won by 2. And then against Jeffrey, Alexey was dominant on the scoreboard in both the 5 and the 3-minute time segments, and then Jeffrey almost, he was on the verge of making a real comeback in the bullet, but he didn't have enough time. He ended up losing by 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. So Alexey has proven himself to be a formidable opponent, but somehow Nihal is just next level right now.
Yeah, he is. Every time control, every position. Impossible to bring down in bad positions, ruthless in good positions, tricky in equal positions. It just, I mean, it's been a force just to be reckoned with here. And, nobody likes to see a beating. And I think it's important to, again, as I said, keep two things in mind here. On the one hand, to truly celebrate and sort of appreciate the incredible strength of Nihal. And at the same time, to congratulate Alexey on an amazing on his amazing play throughout the tournament and to sympathize with him. It's never easy to be on the receiving end of this kind of beating.
No, certainly not. He can score a couple wins down the stretch to make himself feel a little bit better, not too much, but 96, 97 if you take 95. So there were tactics available there.
Yeah.
And just trying to sit on the position, but somow Nihal's going to win this game.
Yeah, King G7. He's going to twist his pieces around. He's going to perform some gymnastics, and he's going to be better in like 5 moves.
Yeah, he's playing devilish defense, which I guess is only fitting because apparently we had a quote from Nihal before the match. We interviewed him. Well, we didn't, but somebody did. And he said his friends call him the devil sometimes.
And I think we see why.
and
he's slaughtered is what it is.
His position isn't very good, though, right now.
Nope, but that hasn't stopped him.
That's true. It certainly has not. He's got his rook on e6, which is a good defender. He's keeping his knight on e8 to stop any kind of knight f6, but he's very much tied down here. You can't play c6. That drops b6.
Ooh, and a nice idea. Well, Alexey, h4, king h3, just inching in. But you got to be careful when you
97.
97.
Yeah, 97.
And he finds it. And where there is a knight, there is trouble. But this is queen e7, knight g7, e6. E6 drives the pawn in. Queen g5, though.
Queen e5.
Knight f5. And queen e3. Oh, my goodness. That's all very close.
Yeah, you thankfully get the queen because otherwise this little fork here would have been
Alexey gets this one.
Disaster.
Yep. Queen takes f5, queen e3.
So queen me.
Queen b2 to the last drop of blood every game. That is.
Why did he bring his king up to c2?
King b1 though. Oh, okay.
Nice try though. Knight f5 was smart.
If there was one less attacker on e7, that would have been more effective.
Yeah, it would have been.
And Alexey just says, "All right, I'm getting my king and I'm giving checkmate." And yeah.
For Alexey, he just will try to get a couple more. His bullet rating is 30-39. I didn't even notice that because I was too busy looking at the 32 in front of Nihal's rating. But Alexey clearly no beginner when it comes to bullet chess.
Is incredible. Again, really only Hikaru can compete with. I would say both of them are so incredibly strong. This has been a treat to watch these players. 95, Nihal jumping out ahead here in the opening.
Yeah, the queens are coming off, so it looks like shouldn't be too big of an advantage for either side, but there's plenty of life left if the queens are not traded. And black can even play queen 8 if you're not careful, so that's why the queens came off.
Right. Knight d3 here, creating that pin against the bishop. This might fizzle out if Alexey is able to ward off the immediate initiative.
And before just bishop moves back to d6. Okay, not that big a deal.
Bishop e5, rook e7. Bishop e5 could be nasty. Because rook e7, I'll take the bishop. Okay. Nihal's definitely better with the 2 bishops, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. These bishops are great.
So.
And bishop just moving.
Well, then you might pin the bishop. That rook on e1, you got to be careful about. Rook e8. How do you wait? F5.
F3.
Oh, F5, bishop d5. Oh, you defend the rook. Oh, yeah. I missed that.
So that's why the bishop dropped to g3 to keep the rook defended here. It could have gone d2 as well. But now c5 is really hanging. And I don't know if Sarana has a move here.
Bishop f5. Well, you get the e file. That's what's important here. Oh, and he also attacks the knight. That's a devastating pin.
Ugh. Rook d8, rook takes c5. Thank you.
Yep, and that's an exchange. And rook takes c5 here. Boom.
Yeah.
Back ranker.
There's the back rank mate, which is why the
rook
was immune to capture.
It's over.
No, this is
another smooth display by Nihal, who's not taking the foot off the gas pedal. Yeah. Yeah, in these situations, it's not easy to say anything. It's the match has been decided. They're playing for some prize money. Rook takes c4, by the way, wins the game on the spot, and he finds it. But I'm just sad this is coming to an end. This has been, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the end, Robert, but what an event this has been, and what a match this has been.
Yeah, it's a little strange. It feels like we were so spoiled earlier in the bracket, and there were many close matchups coming down to the absolute wire. For example, Nihal against Anton Smirnov was super close. Sarana versus Sevian was really as close as it gets. And then in the semis and the finals, somehow instead of the matches getting more competitive, they've almost become less competitive.
Yeah, that just happens sometimes, because the players are in different frames of mind. You never know what's going to happen. And the great thing about the JSCC is it's not like one of those things where you have a round of 32 and there's clear favorites. I think one of the magic of this event, apart from the players themselves, were the strengths of the players always being close, even in the opening matches. Anything can happen in any match, and so we were on the edge of our seats essentially every single match.
Yes, that's the case. And I mean, all credit should go to Nihal because in the first match against Andrew Tang, he looked very mighty. Then against Anton Smirnov, we were like, wait, this guy is actually very beatable. And he was losing in the 5-minute portion to Smirnov. He was even losing after the end of the 3-minute, if I'm not mistaken, to Smirnov. And then the bullet is where he decided to, that was the time to shine. And after that, so I guess not even just after, with the exception of that match, it hasn't looked close in his other matches. So Nihal, something about Smirnov's style was tough for Nihal. Otherwise, he has just been an absolute just demon. He's a devil.
Yes, he has, and that's why his friends call him that. And it's, one gets the sense the confidence level and just the ability to play all of these types of positions with time pressure. It's the set of skills being as well-rounded as it is. I mean, he's, I think, definitely going to be above 2,700. He's, you can just sense the talent and the maturity level and the versatility. He's going to be the very well-deserved winner of the JSCC, a tournament that is going to be fascinating for years and years to come, Robert.
And with the addition of the 4 qualifiers from the Speeches Championship Grand Prix and Vladimir Fedoseev, getting second place in the Super Swiss, but because Hikaru Nakamura is already qualified, we have some players who in that ballpark of Nihal Sarin, right? There's very strong players who may not be 2750 plus FIDE. So I'm very curious who Nihal's first round matchup will be because some players are more difficult than others, especially stylistically. But I do think that Nihal, I've said this throughout the match today, he has a chance no matter who he faces.
Anybody.
But I do believe he does not want to face Hikaru Nakamura.
I don't know why. Hikaru, he's a pretty easy opponent, but no, I mean, he's got a chance against anybody, particularly if he displays the same kind of confidence and ability to survive and thrive in time pressure. But that's going to be an incredible event in its own right. This format, there's something about this format, whether it was the IM, not a GM, whether it was the JSCC, the SCC, it brings out not only the best in players, but it just makes it so competitive. It makes it so fun to watch. You get all of the time control showcased. And you get a little bit of everything, which is awesome.
Indeed. And 3 minutes left of the JSCC. We know that Nihal Sarin is the champion. Now this is just a formality at this point. And will he be able to take this game? His king is far more active. There's rook d2 check that you have to keep an eye on. So,
Here
it comes. That king needs to be on c3, not on g3.
Rook f3 forces the king to the second rank. Maybe you chase the knight away now? I don't know.
Okay. Knight d7, hitting b6, but the rook, comes back in defense.
Despite the symmetrical pawn structure, it's a very unbalanced position. The fact that Black's king is so far away really hurts him in relation to the pawns, but he chases the knight away. Look at the position of the knights now, the dancing.
It's funny, Don, you said it hurts him with relation to the pawns. Totally agree, but it helps him if you keep the rooks on the board and create an attack, like king f2, king e2, knight e3.
Yeah, it can walk in all of a sudden.
So I have to be a bit careful here. And here comes that king.
And White's king inches further into its little cave there on a3, but that's going to be smoked out with a knight. So he comes back, rook e6, again, the dance, knight e3, and you called it, king e2. That's going to happen.
Uh-oh.
And all of a sudden, the attack is going to be mate.
It could be a quick mating net, but king e2 is rook h2 check, so you get away with that.
And so Alexey finding ways, king e2 now sliding the king and rook h6 I would play. Rook d1 coming.
Oh,
here we go.
Yeah, here's rook d1.
That's exactly what you called. But
gosh.
Where exactly is the mate?
Knight d1, knight c3.
Yeah, the rook d8, okay, so I don't know where that came from. Well, knight d1, it's still going to be mate. King c2, king b1, and knight e3.
Oh my gosh, king b1.
Oh, my lands.
There's mate.
Oh, but b4. Knight e3 is just amazing.
Oh my gosh, you have knight f1, knight d2 mate. Knight f1, knight d2 is mate.
Oh my god. Oh, this is incredible.
How?
Oh my goodness. That is the
oh my gosh,
quintuple exclamation mark on top.
I'm pulling up that board.
What is that?
That was sick. King c2, thinking that you're going after the b pawn, but it's all about mating this king. The king has no safe squares. So after knight b6, knight e3, that's a check.
A pawn in a knight endgame.
Oh my god!
And you found that instantly.
Well, the king would only have one escape square after you push the pawn. So
incredible geometry. Incredible.
And knight d2 mate. What a final position. I mean, that's the last position I want to see.
This is just illegal. I mean, this is just ridiculous at this point.
And oh wait, what's happening here? The bishop on b4
just lost the bishop. I mean, he's not even stopping. He's just stepping on that gas pedal. Knight d7, I guess, is fine for black though.
Right, because if knight takes e7, you can always take on c3. But now queen b4.
No, but that was just something out of a study.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Castle queen side, I think, for white now.
Yeah. That was just unbelievable.
No, I'm pumped.
It's a 10-point game.
Knight e4. Oh gosh, here it comes.
No, what's particularly impressive is how he hasn't let up, and it's not out of a. I'm not saying this to imply that he should have. He's just displaying the same exquisite level of play, even in the bullet. Even though obviously the match has been decided for quite a while now.
What a beast! I'll be honest. There were moments where I was kind of like, it felt like Sarana should have more points, and Nihal was really spending too much time in the earlier segments. But when I see that knight checkmate, I forget about all of that past stuff. And I'm just
you do.
Yeah, this guy's just...
You realize you're in the presence of
Knight f5's coming at some point.
Queen h6 too.
Oh, yeah.
You're in the presence of greatness. And this is going to be the last game of the segment. And the last game of the match and of the entire tournament. What will the last move be of the tournament?
Resignation. Because knight f5, you can't play queen f6. Knight h6 check wins the queen, and here comes queen h6 otherwise.
And rook takes f5, rook g5. You might have a rook sack here.
Yeah, it's mate.
It's mate, and a fitting conclusion to an unbelievable run by Nihal Sarin, and such an impressive run, of course, by Alexey Sarana as well. Rook takes e8 was made in 2. This is also fine. Bishop h7. No, you don't do that. Bishop h7. Oh, that's check. What am I even saying? Queen g5 is check. And
I was wrong. Not a resignation because
it's lost on time. I think the internet got to Alexey there, but it was winning anyway. 18-7, the final score as Nihal Sarin wins the JSCC. A performance for the ages, Robert.
Yeah, he saved his best for last, and Nihal Sarin just cruise honestly to the championship. What a worthy winner. He is the junior speed chess championship. You hear the word junior, but their age belies their strength. All of these players are exceptional. They are world-class players, and Nihal Sarin, he is just mesmerizing to watch.
Absolutely. I would just no words to describe some of these performances, and obviously a huge congratulations also to Alexey Sarana, the bright young star from Russia who will now play the Russian higher league. He played fantastic, not only in this match, but across the board, but succumbing to the just the wizardry of the devil, Nihal Sarin.
And for Alexey, he bows out of the JSCC in the final match, and I believe it's his last time able to play because he's 20, which means he turns 21. He ages out. And for Nihal, he'll have many more opportunities, but perhaps by next year, he'll just qualify SCC directly. And we are going to take a break. We want to get Nihal Sarin in on a call so that we can interview him, hear his thoughts, and hey, maybe he'll just be smiling because he has won a place in the Speeches Championship. We'll be right back for the interview from this Junior Speechless Championship match brought to you by Chess.com and Chess.com. And we are joined by the JSCC champion, Nihal Sarin. And I have so many questions to ask you, but I'll start with this one. There were many great moments by you in this match, but have you ever checkmated somebody with a knight and 2 pawns against a knight and 2 pawns like that?
Yeah, that was a very strange one. And it just came by accident, of course. I didn't calculate. But when I played knight f1, I saw that I could just remove knight d2 on its mate. So,
well, Nihal, congratulations. That was a fantastic performance all around. One thing that was particularly impressive was your ability to not only survive in acute time pressure, but also thrive and win a lot of games with 1 second on the clock. Do you practice that directly? Do you feel like, what's the sort of secret there? What do you do to keep yourself calm? And what do you do to develop that ability?
I think it's just by playing a lot of bullets. And especially I've played quite a lot of 10+1, like 10 seconds. We have also played quite a lot there, I think.
Yeah. I can attest to your wizardry there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Nihal, you just won yourself a payday, but I think more importantly for you as a competitor, you earned your entrance into the Speed Chess Championship. Is there any super grandmaster that you would particularly want to play? I mean, we don't know what the field is going to be yet, but who's your dream parent?
No one really. I'm not playing anyone there. Like, I'm clearly going to be the weakest, and yeah, it will be great to play anyone in the field.
Well, Nihal, I know it's late for you. I have just one more question. Looking back at the JSCC and at your performance, what moment was it 97 mate? What was your most memorable match or your most memorable moment that powered you through to the final and to victory?
Which knight d7 mate?
Well, the one that you just put on the board.
Knight d2.
Yeah, knight d2. Sorry, knight d2.
Okay. Yeah, maybe this one was the best. I don't remember anything.
Well, I have another question for you, Nihal. Your matchup against Anton Smirnov was your closest one. Do you think having that really tough matchup early helped you? Because after that, the matches went completely your way. So it seemed like you actually got better the deeper into the tournament you went.
Yeah, maybe. Like that was a very tough match, and yeah, then I was very happy to pull through. So maybe that energy carried me through the tournament.
Well, I mean, we have nothing else to say but congratulations. There were so many people rooting for you. So you have a lot of fans out there. I'm sure you've made many more today. And we just look forward to seeing you continue to shine. And, well, you're going to be in the Speed Chess Championship. So that's super exciting. Congratulations.
And congrats.
Thank you. See you.
Well, that is your junior Speed Chess champion, Nihal Sarin. Chess goals predictions, they were correct in the sense that Nihal was the champion. Hard to bet against that guy, honestly, just how strong he was. 18-7 in the final. Daniel, what a performance.
Absolutely amazing. His moves do the talking. He's also confident, and yet he's humble and very mature. And it's always a pleasure to watch someone like that. And his moves really did a lot of talking today and in his previous matches. This was a performance for the ages. This was an incredible display of brilliance in all areas. And what an incredible run this was by Nihal Sarin. He is something to watch.
Just an absolute beast. And he is one of the qualifiers for the Speed Chess Championship, which has a $100,000 prize fund. We saw Vladimir Fedoseev qualify via the Speed Chess Super Swiss. There will be the Bullet Chess Championship and an SEC Invitational where people can earn their spot. The placements, I think, are set as well from the SEC Grand Prix. Maybe I didn't actually look to see who's there, but I know Nordibek Abusatarov, Haik Martirosyan were doing extremely well. So we'll round that out. I'm sure they'll be mentioned shortly. But today it's all about Nihal Sarin, the teenager from India, a superstar. He really did achieve excellence throughout the JSCC. We just have to congratulate him. I really don't know how else we can compliment the guy because, as you said, his actions spoke louder than any words we could say.
Absolutely, they do. And India has been a chess powerhouse, putting out tons of talented young players, but Nihal might be the star that shines brightest. And he just confirmed that today. He's got such a bright future ahead of him. You see his play, you think he's been around for a while, but then you look and he's only 16 years old. He's got so many more years of incredible chess ahead of him. What a performance and what a tournament this was. Really a privilege and a treat to have had courtside seats to these displays of brilliance.
Yeah, seriously, Nihal Sarin, you can just, that this guy, he's already amazing, but you're going to keep an eye out because he's only going to ascend from here. And for Alexey Sarana, it might be his last opportunity in the JSCC, but we're not done hearing from him either.
We're absolutely not.
Super strong. He got through these tough pairing after tough pairing. Yesipenko, Sam Sevian, Jeffrey Zhang, just to make it to the final. That's an achievement in and of itself. So we should congratulate him. I know it's not the way he wanted to end his tournament, but he has a lot to be proud of as well.
Well, absolutely. There were a lot of MVPs, Nihal the MVP, but close, well, I wouldn't even say close behind. Another MVP, Grandmaster Robert Hess. He wasn't a participant, but he made it better for me. Oh, wait, I'm commentating with him right now. I shouldn't refer to him in the third person, but this was such a treat to watch. And Robert, as usual, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sad that this is coming to an end, but it was amazing.
It is quite sad that this event is over. I could do so many more of these matches with you, Danya. It's been so fun. And, before we sign off, we'd be remiss not to thank everybody who continues to tune in, whether you've been watching on Twitch, YouTube, Chess TV. We are so appreciative of all of you. You make these matches even more fun for us, and I know the players are personally thankful for your support. They can't read your messages during their streams, but they feel it. It energizes them. So thank you so much to our producer, Bick, who's been with us the entire way, doing an amazing job. Got to thank him and to the whole team at Chess.com and ChessKid.com for sponsoring this event. It makes it possible. So on that note, we're going to sign off. It's been real, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your days. Stay safe and happy chessing. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.